Chapter 101 Golden Lion. When did you come here? Enel's muscles tightened. In the face of this monster, he did not dare to take it lightly. There are guests coming. Of course I, the host, will come to greet them. But my guests don't seem to be very polite. They destroy the things here without saying a word, and want to leave without saying hello. To the tree interrupted by Enel. The juniors are so rude now, don't they know how to respect the seniors? It was discovered. It's really unfortunate. I wanted to chop down a tree and leave, but now it seems that it can't be done. As pirates, what kind of courtesy do we need? Only those who have played the house. Little devils, will they have the good character of respecting the old and loving the young? After the initial consternation, he adjusted his mentality. Ski is not an irrational beast, not incommunicable. Gia ha 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 ha, that's right, kid. Pirates don't need sympathy and pity, whether it's a child or an old man, they can swing the knife without hesitation. So it means that if I'm satisfied, I won't bypass you so easily. Ski stared at Enel with dangerous eyes, murderous. Enel is timid, maybe. He hides his abilities, conceals his appearance, avoids immediately when he encounters the Navy, and sees the Moby Dick taking a detour. Even though he knows that the other party is unlikely to do anything to him, he still avoids it. This is indeed timid, but it's also a caution. Those who overestimate their own abilities will be mercilessly engulfed by this sea. But when it comes time to avoid it, fear is useless. Since it is impossible to avoid, then only face it bravely. Enel, he wouldn't hold his knees and tremble when a crisis came. To set foot on this sea, you must have the courage to risk your life. He was indeed a little too cautious, a little too careful. But he never feared death. Caution and caution are just to live better, stand at a higher angle and see the beautiful view of the world. Although the Golden Lion had an AWE-inspiring killing intent, it was just a test. He was assessing Enel's aura and observing Enel's aptitude. If he saw it, he wouldn't mind forgiving Enel's offense to him and making him his partner. That's really terrifying aura, worthy of being a legendary figure. Mr. Ski, I have always admired you very much. Shichi was a little surprised, and then said, Stinky brat, don't think that you can escape by saying a few words that I like to hear. No, I'm telling the truth. What do you think? One Piece Gold D. Roger. The man with the D in his name, the one who arrived at the island of the end. Mr. Ski, what do you think? As soon as he heard Roger's name, Sky was obviously agitated, and his breathing became quicker. Although he does not agree with Roger's philosophy, he does respect the man from the bottom of his heart. Ski is a hero, there's no doubt about that. Fierce, cruel, unscrupulous to achieve their goals. A typical pirate's style, no naivety, no sympathy, this is the real pirate. But whether it is a hero or a hero, they all carry the word, male. They all have an admirable side in their personalities, and they all have a charming side. For opponents who also exude endless brilliance in their personalities, they will identify and affirm. Therefore, after hearing that Roger was arrested, he shot through the legs of his subordinates and rushed to the Navy headquarters alone. Little devil, that man is not something you can talk about. Sky growled angrily. Although I don't agree with his philosophy, I respect him as well. Enel sat down cross-legged. Hearing this, Shiki looked interested. Little devil, you don't agree with Roger's philosophy. Yes, I recognize you, the Flying Admiral, more than one piece. Don't be ashamed, I don't need a kid like you to approve. Golden Lion said. The surrounding stones were already floating beside him, and he looked like he was about to smash Enel into a sieve. Akutagawa's expression became more vigilant, and Milo drew his pistol. Carter drew his broadsword. As if he didn't see those stones, Enel continued to say calmly, are you deceiving yourself? Mr. Ski, look at the sea now, right? People are rushing to the Great Root for the sake of what? They're all chasing after Roger's treasure. They're following in Roger's footsteps. Now the overlord of the sea is Whitebeard. People sing Roger's name, How many people remember you? How many people are afraid of you? Although it has only been a few years since your time, the history of the Golden Lion, the name K, has become history. Quote. Shut up. The veins appeared on the forehead of Shiki. Anal continued. This era is called Whitebeard. No, it's still Roger's era. Even though he's dead, he still affects the world. The torrent of the era is rolling in the direction he wants. On. You lost to Roger. Lost to the world. I told you to shut up, didn't you hear me? Shiki raised his hand. Sharp stones flew towards Enel. A pair of huge black membrane wings emerged from behind him, blocking them all. Ski didn't use domineering, so Enel easily defended. These are just ordinary stones. The moment they hit the membrane wing, the huge kinetic energy turns them into powder. However, don't you think such times are a little too gentle? Enel's words resonated with Ski. Let him give up his plan to continue, and listen to what Enel wants to say next. In fact, Enel has absolutely no interest in what the world is like and what the times are like. He doesn't care about the whole world, he only cares about himself. He also didn't want to go after Roger's treasure, or rule the world. He just wanted to go everywhere. He will not be obsessed with Roger's will, nor will he pursue Sai's ambition, he will only be true to his own heart. Do whatever you want. Anal doesn't have a specific goal. Generally, he thinks of something, and he will do it after estimating the danger and confirming that there is no major problem. The freedom he wanted was similar and slightly different from Luffy's. Luffy's freedom is a yearning for adventure, he will not take the initiative to hurt others. And Enel's freedom is unfettered freedom, the indulgence of evil thoughts in his heart, his approval of sex, and his disgust for any shackles. Chapter 102 Gentle Times. To be truly free from bondage, you must break everything that stands in the way of freedom. In order to gain the freedom in his heart, Enel must have unparalleled power to shatter everything. Only after possessing such power can he truly release his heart and act according to his own will, without considering others. Without that power, he would have to consider possible dangers before acting. The four emperors, the revolutionary army, the world government, or various other enemies may pose a threat to him. Therefore, on the road of pursuing freedom, what Enel has shown is the persistence of power. Enel is not interested in ruling for the time being, but in any case, the world government will become his biggest obstacle, and one day he will confront the world government, there is no doubt. Mr. Ski, are you saying that the current pirates are real pirates? Don't call those guys pirates, that's an insult to the term, those naive bastards chasing ridiculous dreams. How can they be called pirates? Said Skur. Yeah, those who pursue illusory dreams are not so much pirates, but adventurers in pirates. The real pirates should kill, destroy, plunder, and conquer. Black smoke surged over Enel's body. His abilities suit him, exactly as he defines a pirate. Strengthen yourself by killing, devouring, and plundering the life force of others. Just like what real pirates do. Gia ha 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 ha, it's really interesting. You little bastard, it suits my appetite very well. The Golden Lion felt a little bit like he found his fellow man. How about you, do you want to join us? Become my partner. The Golden Lion invited Enel. It's not necessary to join. So you refused. The Golden Lion's expression darkened. No, I don't mean to reject it completely. I have my pursuits, and I want to see more of the world. I also know a lot about you, Mr. Ski, and I can see that you are a well-rounded person. You won't do it until you're fully prepared, right? Enel said lightly. What a nasty little brat. Yeah, that's right. It's a long time before my plans start. Enel put away the dragon wings, then it's useless for me to join you now. Going to the sea to fight is what I want to do next. I'm chasing power. Let me know when you move. I must come and fight with you against the world government, after all they are my hindrance too. In the end, you still don't want to join us. Shike has a tendency to do it again. The 800-year heritage of the world government can't be underestimated. Are you really sure? When you plan, it's good to have a help, right? And I'm only loyal to strength. If you can show me when the time comes the power of convincing, what's the harm in joining you? Eno saw that the situation was not good, and took a step back. Of course Shiji believed in his own strength, so he restrained his murderous intentions. He is confident that in 15 years, Eno will be brought under his own power. And what Eno just said was also approved by him. He did not intend to kill this interesting-looking kid just like that. Then we seem to have reached an agreement, Mr. Ski. In order to make our future plans smoother, it is necessary to strengthen our combat power. Can you do me a favor? Go ahead. I know Mr. Shiki, you are a great swordsman. You have a good swordsmanship. And my partner is also a swordsman. I want him to practice with you for a few years. Neil pointed to Akutagawa Huang said. This was an idea that suddenly came to him. The strength of the Golden Lion should not be underestimated. With his guidance, Akutagawa Huang can grow better. Don't make any decisions for me, or I will kill you. Akutagawa Huang looked at Eno with a serious look. I'm sorry. Ahahaha, I'm just making a suggestion. Whether you agree or not depends on the two of you. Eno scratched the back of his head. Little devil, although you said that if my power can convince you after the plan is launched, you will become my partner. But it is not yet. It seems that I have no obligation to guide him, right? Shiki said. Don't say that, Mr. Shiki, do you think we can surpass you at that time? Even so, I will still fulfill my promise to help you deal with the world government. Besides, the world government is not so easy to overthrow. If you fail, then we will be the heirs of your will. Since Roger is dead, you can't compete with him again, but you can let the successor of your will and the successor of his will decide the outcome. To prove what a real pirate is. I won't lose. Jia ha 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 ha, kid, you convinced me. But for me to teach your partner, he still needs my approval. The Golden Lion laughed and looked at Akutagawa Huang. Don't talk to yourself, you too, I need you to teach me, and I also have to confirm it myself. Akutagawa Huang pulled out the shadow, killing intent boiling. This feeling, repairing the rover road. Ga ha 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 small ghost, attack, let me see your sword, let me see your qualifications, the value is not worth teaching. History is no longer he swings the sword with both hands, but even with his legs, he can unleash the might of a great swordsman. Akutagawa Huang slashed at Shiki with a red slash, which was easily resolved by him. The other party is Shiji. Even if he doesn't understand the meaning of the name in the sea, he can feel the power of Shiji from the other party's aura. Akutagawa Huang did not hold back from the beginning, and used all his strength. The red sword light like raindrops flew upward overwhelmingly. As if the cherry blossoms are falling, the sky is so gorgeous and beautiful. Sakura falls rain. Shiji didn't dodge, just kicked his legs at will, cutting out a white blade. The wind pressure carried by the slash blew the incoming sword light away. Humph! Kid, are you juggling? Akutagawa did not speak, he responded with the sword in his hand. Flower cut. This is a zigzag attack consisting of 3 slashes. Die Ghost Slash. A black-red half-moon-shaped sword light followed closely. The former is fast, the latter is slow. The 2 attacks arrived almost simultaneously. Then he kicked his right leg hard and dashed forward. Absolute sword. Although the sword light is gorgeous, the long-range attack is not as sharp as the sword in their hands. Akutagawa's speed was very fast, and he caught up with the first 2 attacks. Chapter 103 Separate. After Shiji swayed, Flower Cut, and Ghost Cut, he faced Akutagawa Huang who came straight from him. This is a sword like a beam of light. Not bad, but that's all. Shiki is using the double sword style, and he still has a leg that has not been used since the beginning of the battle. He raised his right leg, blocked Akutagawa's thrusts, and waved his left leg. Kianchiegu, he didn't use all his strength with this sword, leaving a lot of leeway. But even so, it cannot be taken lightly. Wow tilde ah. Akutagawa Huang reluctantly put the sword in front of him to block before being hit by the slash, and then flew backwards after being hit by the impact. It's a fancy move, but the sword is not for you to watch. What kind of thing can a sword as soft as you cut? I saw Shiki's swordsmanship and learned the huge gap between him and the great swordsman. Akutagawa Huang couldn't help but take a little blow. After all, he became famous at a young age, and he won the title of the first swordsman of Siam early. It was inevitable that he was a little proud, but this experience made him understand the vastness of the world. Shiki was almost in place without moving his position, and he used his legs to swing the sword, and did not use all his strength to suppress him. The sword that a swordsman swings with his hand is the most terrifying, but the opponent has achieved this level with his legs, which shows the profoundness of his swordsmanship. Mr. Ski, please teach me how to use the sword. Akutagawa knelt down on one knee and bowed his head respectfully. You have a good attitude. But now you are not qualified for me to teach you. Look what sword you are using. Soft and powerless, are you a woman? The sword is pure sharpness and hardness. Those things that don't matter, then I promise to teach you. The golden lion smoked a cigar. Long silence. The tiger, who had just been knocked out by Enel, woke up, then quietly walked away and disappeared into the forest. It's not stupid either. These people are obviously not easy to mess with, especially the aura on Shiki's body, which makes it frightened. If you don't run, are you waiting to be fired? Akutagawa finally gave his answer. Impossible, I can't give up my original swordsmanship. Killing and beauty, death and splendor, this is my sword. As a swordsman, if even the sword in his heart is broken, then he is not worthy of talking about himself. He's a swordsman. Akutagawa stood up. Jia ha 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 ha, well said. If even the sword in your heart is broken, what kind of swordsman is you? Everyone's swordsmanship is different, and it is impossible to follow the footsteps of the predecessors. Go to the top. Boy, you stay, I promise. The golden lion laughed. He was actually interested in Akutagawa Huang's aptitude, and wanted to dig Enel's corner. Judging from the performance just now, the bond between them is obviously not very deep, and the team is only connected by a very weak relationship. Shiji is confident to use his strength and charm to convince Akutagawa Huang. It looks like we've reached an agreement, and since that's the case, we won't stay any longer. Mr. Ski, goodbye. Enel waved his hand. Carter had already put the broken tree into the space. Now that the goal has been achieved, Enel doesn't want to stay any longer. Even though it seemed like a pleasant conversation now, Ski was no good. I don't know when to change my mind, and I have to let him join. Although he doesn't have a character that would rather die than give up, he doesn't mind hanging around with Shiki for a while. However, that doesn't quite match his development plan and may hinder his ability to become stronger. When it comes to small things, Enel is indifferent, but he is very concerned about such big things as strength improvement. That's right, but you're making me a little uncomfortable, kid. Shiki was indeed a moody guy, with a malicious smile on his face. Thousand Cut Valley. This time, he didn't keep his hand, and the huge slash covered Milo, Enel, and Carter. When the golden lion said, but, Enel had already raised his guard, and there were often no good words behind such a turning point. Facing the huge slash that came flying, he blocked Milo and Carter. After dragon transformation, he crossed his arms in front of his chest to meet him. The slash cut off his left arm without any hindrance, and the scales harder than iron were as fragile as plastic. The slash then cut most of his right arm and disappeared. The piercing pain ran along the nerves into Enel's brain. But now is not the time to care about that. He bit his severed left arm with his mouth. There was not only one sword glow, but many others hit the soil in front of them. The golden lion cut off a corner of the island. Jia ha 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 ha, since you want to go down, I'll give you a ride. Shiki released his ability to attach to the broken corner. The three of Enel fell along with the rocks and soil. Wow tilde 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 tilde. Meow tilde. Carter and Milo screamed. Falling from such a high place, even if the water is below, the huge impact can be fatal. Huh, what's wrong? Are you dissatisfied with my actions? Shike said, looking at Akutagawa Huang, whose face was a little unsightly. No, if he just died like this, it means that he is only at this level. He is not qualified to be my captain. Akutagawa Huang said calmly, I believe he will not die. Carter stopped screaming, he felt something grab his back, and the falling trend stopped. Turning his head to look around, Milo was also being held by a claw. It was covered with pitch-black scales that looked as thick and hard as fine iron. There is no reflection in the sun, as if all the light is absorbed by the scales. Milo turned his head and looked behind him. A sturdy body, a thick and long neck, black membrane wings, a terrifying head, and two horns that grow backwards. The end of the tail has a half-moon-shaped bone. The whole body is dark, with blue lines, slender but full of beauty. These are countless legendary monsters, mythical creatures passed down by human word of mouth. Symbol of strength and destruction, powerful and terrifying monster, dragon. This time, Anil didn't use darkness to hide his figure. He had no energy to pay attention to such details at this critical moment. Milo and Carter also saw him for the first time in his fully animalized form. Enel's arm was injured, and he grabbed both of them with his hind paws. They looked at each other and screamed in unison. Wow, help, I'm about to be eaten. Enel, you died so miserably. Milo thought that Enel had been swallowed in one bite because of her small size. Meow, Carter wailed. It doesn't want to die, it still has a lot of canned fish that it hasn't eaten, and many kinds of fish that it hasn't eaten yet. Its great dream of tasting all the fish has yet to come true. It doesn't want its cat birth to end like this. Chapter 104 By luck. Carter and Milo struggled after an initial shock. In their opinion, falling down is a life and death situation, and being caught by a dragon is a life and death situation. Milo is okay, with thin arms and thin legs, it doesn't matter much if he struggles. But when Carter, a fat cat weighing more than 2,000 kilograms, struggled, Enel staggered and could not fly stably. You are so noisy, shut up. Enel's current condition is not very good. His left arm was cut off and his right arm was severely injured. The blood continued to flow, and it was even more laborious to fly with the two of them. When you exercise, the blood flows faster and the blood loss becomes more serious. This voice, you are Enel. Meow. Carter also quieted down. Enel brought them closer to the sea. Carter took the tree out of his backpack and threw it down. Then the three sat on the tree. Your arm. Milo found Enel's wound. He suddenly remembered the scene in which Enel stood in front of them when the slash came flying. His nose was sore, and tears fell. Judging from Enel's reaction at that time, he was able to dodge, but he did not dodge in order to protect them. This made Milo feel very guilty. Carter was also sad. 2 tears fell from the cat's eyes, and he couldn't eat fish for 3 days. Well, 3 days is too much. 2 days, no, 1 day. The morning atmosphere lasted for 10 minutes. Enel patted Carter's head with his left hand and said, Don't worry, it's all right. Huh, Milo exclaimed. How's your arm? Wasn't it cut off? Oh, this. Enel stretched out his left hand and shook it. Because it's an incision, it's very flat, so I just need to take it back along the wound. My resilience is very strong. If I cut it and put it back in time. If so, it will grow well soon. Quote. Milo's mouth twitched. What kind of monster-like resilience is this? Enel didn't know there was such an operation at first, but with the mentality of giving it a try, he didn't expect to succeed. Originally, his plan was to find a few more devil fruits to improve his resilience, so his arms could grow out quickly. Self-denial is not something he would do. This time, Milo and the others were saved because Carter was very helpful to his voyage, and he did have a deep affection for Carter. On the premise that he will not be fatally injured, he will not give up Carter. Milo is by the way. In addition, he has assessed the danger of Shikei's slash, and there is no fatal sense of crisis, so he is still very confident to block it. Even if he really loses an arm, it doesn't matter to him. With his strong physique, he can completely grow another one. It is rather time-consuming. Carter was no longer sad. he decided to eat a can of fish to calm his shock. The smell of fish spread in its mouth. Carter felt that his soul had been sublimated, and the golden lion, life and death crisis, etc. were all thrown aside by it. Enel, is it really good to keep that guy Huang by Ski's side? Milo asked. It's okay, Sky won't kill him. No, I mean he might defect and become Sai's subordinate. That's okay, Milo, would you admit a weakling as your captain? No, Milo shook his head without hesitation. Isn't there any problem with that? The same goes for that guy Huang. We can just beat Shiki directly. My agreement with the Golden Lion is, if he can show the strength that convinces me, I'll join them. But if he loses to us, then Huang will definitely come back. The rule of pirates is that the winner gets everything, and the loser can only obey the arrangement. This time, the Golden Lions will let Enel go because they didn't consider him a threat at all. At the same time, Enel's words also gave him a glimmer of hope. If Enel really faced Ski as a challenger, then after failure, there are only two choices, one is surrender, and the other is death. Of course, the former option also depends on whether the other party agrees. Oh, is that so? Milo said. Yeah, I never thought about joining them from the beginning. For the sake of him helping me teach Huang, I can help him. You're so confident in beating Sai. 10 years is enough for me to grow. If I don't even have this confidence, how can I compete with those overlords on the sea? I have a plan, although it depends to a large extent on luck. After success, I can rule the sea. If we fail, then our pirate group will be disbanded. Quote. What plan? Milo asked curiously. Well, don't worry too much, it's still too early. You'll know then. Milo didn't expect any reliable plans to come out of Enel's mouth, so he didn't dwell on it too much, but he suddenly discovered a very serious problem. Enel, can you tell the direction? Enel shook his head and said, because the way is directed by the guy Huang, so the compass is also on him. Then the two looked at Carter. Carter clutched the can of fish in his paws, blinked his glasses, and looked at the two of them suspiciously. Confused and puzzled, what do you see me doing? Looking at each other, Enel and Morosi sighed. Alas. This product is obviously unreliable. Milo suddenly said, Enel, can't you communicate with Carter? Why don't you catch a fish and ask for directions? Enel was stunned for a while before he said, do you really think I'm level 10 in beast language? Can't you? No, let's rely on luck next. After hearing this, Milo looked solemn, lowered his head deeply, turned around silently, and clasped his hands tightly. The sky suddenly became dark, just like his mood. Heavy, very heavy. A light rain fell from the gray sky, blurring the vision. Milo's mood was even more melancholy, and his inner emotions were surging like a tide, and it was almost uncontrollable. Does anyone sail like this? Milo, come in, there might be a storm later. If it gets washed away, it's going to be trouble. Enel shouted at Milo in the diving cabin. Milo wanted to say back to him that we're in big trouble. He opened his mouth, but said nothing, and finally turned into a silent sigh. After Milo also entered the diving cabin, Carter put away the tree. This one will still be used as a boat after the rainstorm has passed. It tied itself tightly to the diving cabin with ropes. Then it rode the storm. It doesn't matter which way you go anyway, it's more labor-saving. Going with the wind, Carter galloped along with little to no paddling. It's all about the waves. Chapter 105 Prepare. Don't worry, Milo, the fresh water in Carter's backpack is enough for you to drink for 3 months. Don't worry about food, plus Carter and I's mobility. If you can't touch the island for so long, then you can only be considered unlucky. Said Enel. Milo looked gloomy. Why do you think I'm unlucky? Because Carter is a sea beast, he can still live quite moistly in the sea. My consumption can plunder the vitality to replenish. So even without water and food, you can still live strong. Only you will die from lack of water. He looked at Milo sympathetically. Milo. Facts have proved that luck is still reliable. Carter caught a sea beast half a month later. After some kind, friendly, and peaceful exchanges, the sea beast formed a very deep friendship with Enel and others. He took the initiative to bring them to an island. When they parted, the sea beast burst into tears. He plunged into the sea and was nowhere to be seen. Carter reluctantly looked at the direction in which the sea beast was leaving, and it asked for a scent similar to fish from the sea beast. It was wondering if the taste would be similar. It's a pity that Enel has promised to let it go, so Carter can only drool at it. According to Enel's previous experience in 10 consecutive lives, it is often not a month after one hit. He didn't plan to make such waves again, otherwise he might not be able to land on land for a few months, and it would undoubtedly be a better choice for Doflamingo to send a ship to pick him up. This is a very remote island. The population of the island is not large, and there is only one small village stake. People live a peaceful and serene life. They work at sunrise and rest at sunset. Children were chasing and playing on the beach, and there was laughter everywhere. On this day, the peace of the village was broken. 3 vicious pirates came to this island. The men there will never forget just how over the top the man was. With a roar of the beast, huge waves were stirred up on the sea. The people who were sleeping were awakened by the roar. A little girl lived in the house closest to the beach. For some reason, she felt that the roar was like a groan, but it was also filled with the pleasure of getting rid of the pain. What's the matter? That voice. Has another sea beast attacked? Women and children hurry to hide in the mountains, and the men take up arms and prepare to fight. Oh. It is not uncommon for sea beasts to occasionally run to the land for sightseeing. They have met more than once. The sea beasts that landed on land did not come to prey. Not all sea beasts were as flexible on land as Carter. Their body structure makes them sluggish when they come ashore and can't catch any prey at all. So they just came up to play. But that massive size has the potential to wreak havoc even just for play. People don't like this big guy. Usually in such a situation, they will entertain the uninvited villain with weapons. Sea beasts are usually only passively beaten because of their slow movement. Although they have thick skin or scales, it is still very painful to be hit by bows and arrows. Often they will flee back to the sea in despair. When the men came to the entrance of the village with weapons, they did not see the huge figure of the sea beast. What's the matter? Maybe it was just a false alarm, and the sea beast may not have come ashore. Don't let your guard down just yet. Look, there is light ahead, someone shouted. Maisel squinted and looked forward, and a pink mass was slowly moving towards them. The faint pink light is particularly conspicuous in the dark night. The closer they were, they could already see who was coming by the moonlight. It was 2 children and a cat. The boy at the front, who looked 7 or 8 years old, asked the person next to him, "Miro, is this the right direction?" Well, the sound is concentrated there, very close. Meow, Carter reminded. Oh, I see, it doesn't seem very friendly. Seeing that they were all armed, Enel rushed over without saying a word and threw them all to the ground. He didn't kill him, and he still had something to ask them. But damn, who the hell are you? Miles asked with difficulty. My name is Enel, and I'm a pirate. I'm here to ask you something. Damn pirates, get out, we won't talk about it. Another man shouted with grief and indignation. Ah, so uncooperative. Enel stepped on one of his arms, and pointed a pistol at his head at the same time. Isn't it enough for the weak to obey obediently? Why are they courting death? Ah, the man screamed. Wait, just ask any questions. Don't kill him, Miles said. It looks like there are people who understand. Where is this place? Huh. I'm asking you for the name of this island. This is Wallamund Island. Where is due east? There, Miles pointed in a direction. Oh, that's it, thank you. Enel put away his pistol and walked east. Ah, is that so? Just asking for the name of the island. Miles looked bewildered. Ah, yes, that's it. Or what do you think? Enel took it for granted. Our ship has been broken up, and I'm going to have someone come to pick me up. Those who were beaten with bruised noses and swollen faces are all looking like a dog in the sun. Why is it necessary to make such a big fight just to ask the name? Even if you don't do it, just ask someone at random. Moses, it's me. Enel called Doflamingo. Enel, is something wrong? I have something to ask you. Help me to get 5 record pointers, 2 for each of the permanent pointers to Anabaston and Gaia. And a boat of my style. Ask someone to help me build 2, no, 3. Considering the possibility of accidents on the road, Enel basically has a backup of everything. Hey, it looks like you are about to enter a great route. It's not easy to get a permanent pointer in the North Sea. What you said adds up to a total of 40 million Baileys. This is already Doflamingo. Look at the internal discount given because Enel is an acquaintance. I see. By the way, I'm lost on the path of life again. Send a ship over to pick me up. Doflamingo was a little speechless. I really don't know how you lived until now. Where are you? Wallamand Island. I see, it's not far from my current position. I'll ask Div to pick you up. Thank you, Brother Ming. Don't forget to bring more meat on the boat. I've been eating fish every day for more than half a month, and I almost vomited. Although life force can supplement the consumption of physical strength, there is still a sense of hunger, so Enel will also eat something to cushion his stomach. Doflamingo. Chapter 106 Bellamy. Div took Enel and the others to the island where Doflamingo was. In a bar, the sun shines through the glass windows. Enel sat next to Doflamingo, while Diamante and Torapal drank at the table beside him. There were only a few of them in the bar, and the rest were kicked out. Card features 3 plates of braised fish. Bring me a glass of apple juice, Enel called to the boss. Dover, why are you here? Varaminder is not far from the island where Dover is located, and it only took Div 5 days to go back and forth. It's just a coincidence, the Navy has been chasing me very closely recently. And I heard that carp is also in the North Sea, so I didn't dare to relax for a moment. I've changed 4 places in a row. Those guys really have more noses than the dog is still alive. Doflamingo didn't look very good. Because of the Navy's actions, he didn't have time to take over Flamia's share of the property. If it was divided up by other forces, it would be difficult for him to get it back. The bar owner put the apple juice in front of Enel with a flat expression. No matter what he heard, he didn't change his expression, showing an indifferent look. For him, it doesn't matter whether the guest is a pirate or a navy. Just pay. In this era of great pirates, bars are undoubtedly the most chaotic places, and people from the 3 religions and 9 classes will come here to hang out. This is where all kinds of information spread. Doing things silently and not talking too much has always been their aim. Enel took the drink and drank it. That's really bad luck, but I'm not much better. I've been encountering those legendary monsters lately. First Whitebeard, then Garp, and finally the Golden Lion. Almost scared me to death. Enel complained. Golden Lion, Shaki. Doflamingo suddenly felt that Bahai was so unfamiliar. Crunch. The self-return door of the bar shook. A group of people came in from outside. The lead young man was blonde, with a band-aid on his nose, wearing a black camisole, jeans, and a brown strip of cloth tied around his waist. He stuck out his tongue like a hyena. You guys, are you the Don Quixote family? The young man asked. Carter turned his head and glanced at him, then ignored them, lowered his head and opened his mouth to continue fighting. How can they have good-looking fish? Huh, Diamante looked at him suspiciously. Are you Doflamingo? He said, looking at Brother Ming. Enel thought the man looked familiar. Dover, I'm looking for you. I don't know, Doflamingo replied. Diamante stood up. Who are you? Let me join you too. The young man smiled, showing 2 rows of teeth. He was very confident. Diamante drew his sword to his throat. Don't get carried away. As if he didn't see the sword in front of him, the young man said, Get rid of it, Doflamingo. You little bastard, don't talk to Dover casually. Torapal walked over, a drop of blue mucus dripping from the tip of his finger. I have admired you very much since I was a child. We want to follow you. Give us a chance, Doflamingo. The youth ignored Diamante and Toripal, his eyes fixed on Doflamingo. Now Enel was completely sure that he was Bellamy, and said, Dover, this guy is very interesting, let him try it out. Maybe he will get a good subordinate. Fuck me, all the rascals. Diamante became impatient and slashed at his neck with his sword. Boom. Enel slammed a punch on the table. Diamante's sword rested beside Bellamy's neck. Hey, do you want to mess with me? Enel said. Although Bellamy is not strong, but very loyal, even a little brainless, it is also a good choice to accept it as a subordinate. Kid, we want to follow Doflamingo. Bellamy seemed to be following Dingming, rejecting Enel. This tragic child is bent on becoming a pirate. In his eyes, Doflamingo is a typical pirate, and Bellamy admires him. However, Brother Ming doesn't care what his identity is, as long as he can destroy the world. Is a pirate a glorious profession? It seems that such an identity has nothing to respect, right? Enel's words are just because he likes to plunder, because of his ability, he wants to become stronger, and the best and fastest way is to plunder. Although other identities are also possible, being a king or being a navy can actually be plundered. But they are not as free and convenient as pirates, and they all need any excuse or cover up. He hates trouble, so he just becomes a pirate. Oh, that's right, that's up to you. Enel just proposed it on a whim, and it doesn't matter if he is rejected. Anyway, he didn't take Bellamy very seriously. Too weak, even loyal ones can only do errands. Where are you from? Doflamingo asked. Diamante drew the sword back to its sheath. Bellamy replied, we're all from Natas. Isn't it rich there? What else is there to complain about? Diamante said. That kind of place is boring. The Don Quixote family is the pride of the North Sea. We want to be a pirate group like you, completely different from those pirates who daydream all day long. Is it a daydream? Although it does seem like a daydream, don't underestimate the dreams of human beings. If people lose their dreams, they are not as good as a salted fish. There is nothing to chase after One Piece. It's boring, but life has to have a purpose, doesn't it? Enel said. Hearing the word salted fish, Carter's ears perked up. Bellamy didn't agree with Enel, but didn't refute either. He didn't know who Enel was, but the person who could talk to Doflamingo with that attitude was obviously not a small role. He didn't recognize Enel. Enel's bounty and Doflamingo's new bounty were issued together, causing him to focus on Mingo's and ignore Enel's. You seem to be very optimistic about this kid, Enel, said Doflamingo. Don't you think he's interesting? Enel finished his juice in one gulp. Dover, call me on the phone when my stuff arrives. I see. Enel got up and left the bar. Carter stopped tasting it carefully, and ate the braised fish in 3 bites, and followed. Since Enel is so interested in you, then I'll lend you my pirate logo. However, if someone beats you, you have to give it back to me. Doflamingo looked at the wine in the glass. Really? That's great, Bellamy yelled, clenching his fists in the air. Fantastic. Also cheered those who came in with him. Don't be too happy, I don't need useless men. Doflamingo was drinking. No matter who it is, I'm not going to lose. Bellamy was confident. Chapter 107 Goods. Boom 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 boom. Enel picks up the phone bug. Doflamingo's voice came, the goods you asked for have arrived. I see, where are you? I'll go and pick it up. The port, we are about to set sail, and my people in the Navy have information that they seem to be doing something else. It's not safe to stay in the same place for a long time. Enel called Carter and walked towards the port. The buildings on this island are still easily recognizable, unlike in the wild forest where there are no signposts. In a place like this, he wouldn't go the wrong way. As for the last trip to Dartmouth, that's because that city was planned before it was built. A lot of the houses looked alike, so he had to go the wrong way a few times. Nero, did you hear that? We're leaving. If you hear it, hurry up and join us. Enel shouted to the sky. Milo has the habit of observing his surroundings from time to time, and his level of seeing and hearing is very high. If the distance is not too far, he can not only sense the breadth and strength of others, but even hear their conversations. Ah, I heard you. Milo walked outside the bar. Just as the two pirates wanted to come in, they stopped when they saw Milo coming out. The door of the bar is not wide, and it can only barely allow two people to pass through. Those who are wide and fat are a little too narrow to enter alone. Hey kid, you're in the way. Get out of the way, let's get in first. Milo's head has always been slightly tilted forward, and the turquoise bangs block his eyes, making it difficult to see his expression. Boom. A bullet went through the speaker's thigh, and that was Milo's response. Ah, he cried, hugging his legs. The way was now out of the way, and Milo walked past them. At first, I was frightened by Milo's style of shooting when he didn't agree, but he didn't react until Milo walked a few steps. Bastard, do you think you can leave so easily after you start? The companion of the person who was shot in the thigh pulled out a gun and shot Milo. He aimed at the back of the head, and he believed in his skill that he could hit such a short distance. Milo tilted his head slightly and dodged the bullet. Huh, did you miss it? The pirate who shot was a little surprised. He thought he missed the shot. He doesn't have the domineering look, and he doesn't have any superhuman dynamic vision. I don't know if it was the result of Milo dodging, but I thought it was my mistake. I was about to shoot again, but there was no chance. With two shots, a blood hole appeared in the center of their foreheads. Cut tilde an eyesore. Milo put away his pistol. At the port, Anal took the pointer from Diamante. Hey, your ship has already been built. It's in the dock of the shipyard. Go get it yourself. Then I'll go first. The next time we meet, it should be on the Great Route. Dover Lumingo aboard the Flamingo. Diamonds, followed by Toripol. Goodbye, Dover. After a while, Enel suddenly remembered that Doflamingo had not told him the location of the shipyard. He looked at Carter and asked, Cat, did Dover just say how the shipyard is going? Carter's canned fish almost never leaves his hands, and he is shoving the minced fish into his mouth with a spoon. Sensing that Anal was talking to himself, he looked down at him. Huh? What did you say? Do you know how the shipyard goes? Carter still didn't seem to understand what Enel was talking about, and blurted out, Are there any fish? Enel. Milo came to the port and saw Enel sitting on the steps looking up at the sky. Enel, here I am, he said. Enel didn't get up, he looked at the sea. The distant scene is a little blurry, as if shrouded in fog. Miro, we're in big trouble. Ah, another big trouble. Milo looked at Carter leisurely eating fish, and he didn't look like he was in trouble. Our ship has been built, except for a few problems. What's wrong? Is there not enough money? Milo thought of this first. No, Anal shook his head. I don't know where the shipyard is. Milo stared at Anal with small eyes, and said sharply, So it's this, it makes me worry for nothing. In order to facilitate the launch of the shipyard is usually located near the coast. You can fly along the coastline for a short time. Is it? There were a few twists and turns, but they eventually made it to the shipyard, where Carter used his abilities to pack all three ships into the backpack space. Since everything is ready, let's go to the Great Route. Anal looked to the south, where the sea and the sky meet in the far distance, and farther away, beyond his sight, is the Great Route. The most powerful and mysterious sea area in the entire pirate world, there is unparalleled majesty and magnificence. That dreamy sea, even Anal yearned for it. The most exciting part of the entire op world is half of the confrontation between heroes, the collision of their will and belief. The other half, isn't it the vast and mysterious sea, the magnificent scene full of romantic fantasies? Hey, Enel, you don't want to just go right away, do you? Milo asked. Yeah, is there something wrong? Aren't we going to get lost on the road of life again? It's okay, I bought 10 compasses, even if I lose a few, it's fine. I'm well prepared. No, I mean the problem of the route. A route. Is that kind of thing necessary? Go straight east, and then follow the Red Earth continent to the south, and you can reach the entrance to the Great Route. Once you get to the Great Route, sailing becomes easier. Milo was obviously frightened by Enel, but he still looked very distrustful. I think we should find a navigator. I don't want to pull all the rubbish onto the boat. Guys who have no combat power at all don't need it at all. Only the strong, or those who have the qualifications to become strong, are qualified to be our partners. For partners, although Enel does not pay as much attention as Luffy, his attitude is to help if he can. In his opinion, since others have become his partners, he has an obligation. He is responsible for the safety of his partners, and it is okay to change the purpose of the plan or give up some vested interests. So Enel wasn't ready to let in those who would be dragging their feet in the fight. Otherwise, considering the safety of those people, he would be tied up in doing things. Enel's style of doing things has always been informal. His sailing plan is also very rough. If his vitality is not tenacious enough, he would have died a long time ago. Similarly, as his partner, at least he can't be too fragile, otherwise he will die if he can't last for a few days. Milo knew this. Although Milo was a little thinner, his vitality was still the same as that of Xiaoqiang. Poverty, hunger, and cold, it wasn't all luck that Milo was able to live as a child for so long. Without 2 or 3 brushes, he would have been dead long before he met Enel. Chapter 108 By a Navigator. If you just want someone who can show you the way, maybe buy a slave. It was the owner of the shipyard who spoke. In this era of great pirates, they often receive orders from pirates. So there is often a little connection with the dark world. Go buy a slave. Is that reliable? Milo asked. No problem under normal circumstances. After all, he will be in the same boat as you, right? Unless the slaves don't want to live anymore and want to pull you into the water. Otherwise, it's okay to just point the way. But it can't be too much dependence. After all, they are just slaves, and there are basically no excellent navigators with excellent technology. The shipyard owner replied. On the sea, navigators control the lives of everyone on board, and no one will hand over their lives to those who cannot be completely trusted. Therefore, the market for navigator slaves is not very good, and the price is not much higher than that of ordinary people. I have a friend who does this. Need I introduce you? His name is Orbans, he continued. Enel mused. It seemed like a good idea too, better than their headless scramble. Anyway, even if they only have a compass, they dare to wander around, and they are not afraid of the slaves they bought to play tricks and deliberately lead them in the wrong direction. Even if it goes wrong, the worst-case scenario is to follow Enel's original plan. That plan should be fine. Although Milo was still not at ease, but there was no better way, he nodded to Enel. Okay, then it's decided. Let's buy a slave who understands navigation. Enel said. Although he is the captain, the decision of Milo's objection is invalid, but the opinions of the crew must also be considered. And to be honest, his sailing route is also helpless, who said there are no technicians among them. He'd love to have someone lead the way. Enel and Carter and Milo came to the shop opened by a slave trader who was introduced by the shipyard owner. This is a bar, like an ordinary one, with wooden tables and chairs, and 2 electric fans hanging from the ceiling. I can't see any difference. I want to buy slaves. Enel went in and said directly. The bar was empty and there was not a single customer. What are you talking about, kid? This is a bar. Have you come to the wrong place? I'm a serious businessman. Of course Orbans wouldn't just admit it. The order on this island is not very good, but it is not enough to blatantly carry out such illegal transactions. Ordinary pirates have no fixed place to live, so they don't need to worry about exposure. People like him who settled down here should not be too casual. Care must be taken to avoid detection. He usually only sells to acquaintances, and there will be some big customers who come to him regularly to pick up the goods. But then the price will not be too high, it must be suppressed. In order to get more profit, he will occasionally sell to passing pirates. Of course, he doesn't sell everyone, and he must first prove that the other party is a real pirate, lest he encounter Navy spies or something. The best way to prove it is with a bounty. Huh, I'm sure I'm not on the wrong track. Or are you kidding me? Anal smashed the bar. Huh, is this your first time here, guest? Who introduced him? Seeing him like this, Orbans didn't look like a Navy spy, they wouldn't be so irritable. It is the style of a pirate to act when a word disagrees. For the first time, owner of the shipyard. I need a slave who knows seamanship, do you have one here? I'm really just an ordinary bar here. It usually serves regular customers. You need to recognize your face before you can get a discount. Milo understood what he meant, and recognizing his face was the key. In fact, the owner of the winery originally wanted to tell Enel that if a stranger wanted to buy it, he had to prove his identity first, preferably by showing a reward, but Enel left without hearing it. Neil is still struggling with the offer. What kind of offer? I only need good quality, money is not a problem. Milo said. Enel, do you have your wanted warrant? Take it out and let him recognize his face. A green void appeared in front of Carter, and it reached in and took out a bounty from Enel. Last time, Enel didn't say whether it was still useful or not, so he put it in the space. It has a habit of throwing things into the backpack space. Orbans widened his eyes and said in astonishment, 150 million Baileys. After all, the pictures on the reward order are not the same as me, and people like this, big pirate, just glanced at them. They don't think they'll have anything to do with each other, so they don't pay too much attention. As a result, he did not recognize Enel. Please. Orbans suddenly became very enthusiastic, opened a secret door, and led Enel through the long passage. Eventually they came to a spacious basement. There are also 2 channels leading to nowhere. This is a prison, divided into several rooms. Many people were detained, with collars around their necks and shackles on their hands and feet. These collars are not the kind that will explode. The quality of his goods is not very good, and he doesn't need such advanced things. The detainees all looked sad, and some were weeping in a low voice. Enel also saw several people who seemed to be remorseful, and they may have been deceived to get to this point. Orbans took him to a prison where several women were being held. They were scantily clad, with tears on their faces, and their bodies were clean and not messy. The conditions here are much better than the places I have just passed by. These commodities may be relatively high-end goods, and merchants must also pay attention to their appearance. Have you taken us to the wrong place? I want navigators, not women, said Enel. But the two don't conflict, do they? Albans smiled. Look at this. He pointed to a separate cage. It was a girl with purple hair, fair skin, dark blue eyes, and looked about 12 or 13 years old. She sat there very quietly, giving a sense of quietness. When she saw someone coming, she looked up, expressionless. Enel could feel a trace of fear in her agile eyes. However, Enel's heart remained unmoved. You said she was a navigator. Caroline, from an aristocratic family, 13 years old, has been reading books on the subject since her love of sailing. She can accurately answer the corresponding misses when encountering various problems at sea. She can not only be a good sailor for you helper, exquisite face and exquisite figure, I believe it must be a pleasing thing to put in your room. Osborne explained in a very commercial way. Although it looks good, Enel is more concerned about practicality. Asked, but she doesn't look like a person with much sailing experience. I want this, is there any other? This, I'm sorry, there really isn't any more. Navigators are not a hot commodity. So be it. Chapter 109 Caroline. Caroline was originally a young lady from a noble family, but was accidentally abducted by human traffickers. She had been expecting her father to send someone to rescue her. But as time went on, the hope of being rescued became more and more remote. She had given up hope when it was later handed over to Orbans. So I took the initiative to say that I knew sailing, and it was better to have a skill than nothing but good looks. The price of slaves is also different. If it is a commodity, bought at a great price, everyone will cherish it more. Caroline likes sailing and studies because she also has a heart that yearns for freedom. She used to stare at the sea in a daze, and she longed to be able to gallop on the vast and boundless sea one day. But the life of a noble is a birdcage for her, imprisoning her freedom. She fantasized about being able to escape that cage one day. But she definitely didn't want to leave in this way. While leaving, he fell into a desperate, dark, and even more unfree cage. She prayed that a tolerant, kind, handsome pirate captain would buy her. It's better to be missing a navigator and take her to every corner of the world. It would be even better if she could have a pet to accompany her to relieve her boredom on the journey. Are you sure it's a pirate and not a prince? It sounds unlikely, but now her almost impossible prayer seems half-fulfilled. The pirate group that bought her did have a handsome boy, Milo. Although she wasn't the captain, she felt a little regretful. There is also a cute pet Carter. Just missing a sailor. Her dream of going on a voyage to the sea seems to have gradually come true in a wonderful way after many setbacks. This pirate group surprised her at first, a boy, a child, and a cat. This kind of equipment looks like a child playing at home. It wasn't until Anil ripped off one arm of the two gangsters who were eyeing them that she realized that this was a real pirate group. Caroline's heart was still uneasy. She didn't know what the character of the people on this pirate ship was, and whether they would abuse her in various ways. And she's still wearing a collar, she's still just a slave. Come on, Caroline, show your worth, get rid of your slave status, and let the captain be accepted as a real crew sooner. She secretly cheered for herself. After buying the navigator, Enel set off. The first stop of his goal is Roger Town, although he is not an admirer of Roger, nor is he going to the Great Fairway for one piece. But what kind of scenery the founder of the Great Pirate Age had before he died, and what kind of sea he finally saw, Enel was still interested in seeing it. Go, to Rogue Town, he yelled. That, Caroline hesitantly. She was afraid that Enel would think she was useless when she said that she could not complete the task. However, she really couldn't find the island of Rogue Town on the North Sea map. Enel only prepared 2 maps of the North Sea and the Great Route. Ah, you don't understand navigation, right? Enel's face was not very good-looking. He thought he had bought a fake and shoddy product. No, it's not. There's no such island on the map at all. I've heard before that one piece seems to be executed in Rogue Town, but it was in the East China Sea. Ah, Enel was a little embarrassed and scratched his head. He forgot about it. Then do it again, set off, and go to the Great Route. Since Rogue Town is not in Beihai, he does not insist. Caroline was still speechless. What's the matter? Just use this kind of boat to go to the Great Route. We don't have enough supplies at all. We are still a long way from Upside Down Mountain. It's okay, don't worry, it's all in Carter's space. It ate the backpack fruit. Let's do it again, let's go, to the Great Route. Enel shouted, with one hand on his hips and one finger forward, stepping on the bow. Oh, only Caroline cheered. The scene was embarrassing for a while, the serious crew members didn't respond, only the slave she bought was extremely excited. She felt that this was the beginning of her journey. At this moment, she forgot her situation and was full of expectations for her dreams. She found that she was the only one who responded to Enel, and both Milo and Carter looked at her with surprised eyes, a little bewildered. Hey, you two, put up a little bit of energy. Being so sluggish makes me a very shameless captain. Oh. Meow. Milo and Carter said listlessly. Cut tilde, it's boring. Enel saw that Caroline was still wearing the collar and shackles, and asked, why are you still wearing this? Don't you take it off? Hearing this, Caroline snickered, her prayers seemed to come true. Handsome boy, kind captain, cute pet. And her voyage dreams. Really, Caroline said excitedly, with a hint of uncertainty in her tone. She was afraid it was just a joke to her. You can take it off yourself. It's an eyesore, Enel said. But I don't have the key. Huh, not with you. Caroline was speechless, thinking who would give the slaves the keys to the slave chains for safekeeping. Anil dug into his pocket. I don't have it here. Then he looked at Milo. Carter and Milo both shook their heads. They all forgot their keys. Caroline. Anil's right hand turned into a dragon, and his claws cut off the collar and shackles. With a bang, Caroline felt relieved. The physical and mental fatigue of half a month seems to be gone. Before she could cheer, a sharp claw covered with pitch-black scales grabbed her neck, and her struggle was completely useless with the enormous force. Don't try to escape, you can't escape, and if you dare to deliberately take the wrong direction, I will tear off your limbs and throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Anil felt that he had to warn in advance. Looking at this cold vertical pupil with no emotion at all, she felt that she was being stared at by a fierce beast, and a wordless fear enveloped her. She wanted to speak, but she trembled all over, opened her mouth, but couldn't utter a word for a long time. In the end, there was only a silent nod. Caroline's eyes were full of tears. This captain was different from what she had thought. He seemed a little fierce. Which direction to go? Anil asked. Caroline's heart was pounding. This was the first time she actually operated, and theory and practice were always different. And whether the direction is correct or not is also at stake in her life, and there is no room for mistakes. Looked at the chart, looked at the compass. After confirming their location, she finally found her way with difficulty. Milo's mouth twitched. Looking at her like this, her level didn't seem to be much better than that of a Kutagawa Huang. Chapter 110 Black Dragon at Night. The sun was gradually setting in the west, and the red light was shining in the sky. Both the sea and the clouds seemed to be burning. A fish jumped out of the water and just passed by the eulogy. Quick-eyed Carter took out a trident and accurately passed through the fish's body. On the deck is a barbecue with charcoal already placed. This is the only cooker on the ode to the ode. Because the boat is not big, there is no kitchen, and none of them can cook at all. Only Enel's BBQ was barely able to pass. Now, they have one more person on board. Caroline, a temporary navigator, also worked as a cook. Enel's grilled fish can barely pass. It is not because of his good craftsmanship, but because he bought precious spices at any cost. As long as it doesn't burn, it's not too bad to put these seasonings on. Having eaten Caroline's grilled fish, Carter only felt that what Enel had done before was utter rubbish. It suddenly beat its chest and feet, and felt very indignant and annoyed. In the past, Enel was simply betrayal. Milo was busy killing the fish, and Caroline was in charge of grilling the fish. Enel lay in the cabin, soundly asleep. He doesn't really want to eat this stuff recently. Carter squatted beside the barbecue with a happy face. Caroline cooked one, and she ate one. Milo had his back to them, so he didn't see Carter's movements. After half an hour, he asked, Caroline, how many have you baked? Caroline stammered and said, it's okay, but Lord Carter it. Milo looked back. There were fish bones all over the floor, and next to him was a fat cat rubbing his chubby belly. Bastard, leave us a little bit. Milo angrily smashed the unfinished fish in his hand at its head. Carter didn't open his eyes, twitched his nose a few times, then opened his mouth. In just an instant, it accurately nibbled the fish. There was another fish skeleton on the ground, as clean as a scalpel cut off the flesh bit by bit. Although it is still alive, it does not refuse to come. It used to be eaten raw until it met Floyer. Milo and Caroline were busy for a long time, but the fruits of their labor went into Carter's stomach. The two of them could only eat bread. Milo took a bite of the bread angrily, the dryness in his mouth making him even more depressed. The bread tastes bad and it's hard, its only function is to fill the stomach. Caroline sat beside Milo. She had a smile on her face. Even though she was tired, she was eating worse than when she was at the hands of the traffickers. But very happy. There is no need for restraint, no need for all kinds of etiquette, no need to be so rigid in behavior, and no repression in the hands of human traffickers. Carter sparring with Milo was also funny to her. As for Anal, the seemingly ferocious captain, apart from threatening her at the beginning, which impressed her a lot, there was no sense of existence after that. Milo suddenly got up and left. Lord Milo, Caroline wondered. When Milo came back, there were 2 more jars of honey in his hand. He handed one of the bottles to Caroline. Here, it tastes better on bread. Thank you, thank you. The sun has completely set. The wind at night was a little cold. The eulogy has only 2 bedrooms. On the allocation of personnel, Anal and Milo had slightly different opinions. Milo said, Anal, you should share a room with Caroline, you're a kid, that's fine. Or let Carter sleep with her. Anal glanced at Caroline's chest and shook her head decisively. I thought it would be comfortable and soft to sleep with Carter in my arms. He had a habit of using Carter as a throw pillow. As for Loli, the chest is too hard, it will pimple to the head. Caroline developed relatively late. Although she is already a girl, her body is still a standard Loli. Emphasize her almost invisible mind. When Anal looked at herself, Caroline's heart beat hard and she began to worry. Immediately she thought that Anil was just a child. Then when I saw his disdainful eyes, I was relieved and a little depressed. Was I so bad? No, I'm not going to be separated from Carter. You 2 should sleep together. My chest is too small. I hate it. Anal and Carter went back to their room. Caroline stared at her airport-like chest, a little dazed. Milo and her looked at each other, and his face was a little red. He said, I'll go to Carter and ask for 2 more quilts. You can sleep on the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. Milo can blow people's heads with a single shot without changing his face, and often fights with 1 word. He never took human life seriously, but that was with enemies and strangers. He was quite happy with Caroline grilling fish in the evening, and he had a good impression of her. Caroline's position in his heart now is half of himself, so he can't treat her as a goods. Then you have to treat her the same way you would treat a lady. Milo, Caroline, and Carter all fell asleep to the sound of the waves crashing against the hull. In the dead of night, a pair of eyes suddenly opened, and a scarlet light flickered. This is Anal, who has been yawning all day and has no spirit at all. His life has been a little chaotic recently. Sleep during the day, refreshed at night. Anal stepped over Carter's fat paws to the deck. The clouds in the sky blocked the light of the moon and stars, and there was no light in the whole world. What a beautiful night. Darkness emerged from Anal's body, blending with the night. Under the darkness, scales emerged 1 by 1, covering his entire body. The limbs turned into claws, and the membrane wings pierced the skin of the back and stretched out. The neck becomes longer and the tailbone extends back. A dark and ferocious dragon full of power and wild beauty appeared on the deck. He didn't growl, didn't want to wake his partner. With a flutter of his wings, Anal rushed to the sky. The clouds disperse and the moon shines. A black dragon danced in the sky at a very high speed, and a large group of darkness extended from behind him, shaped like the wake of an airplane flying over. As he develops the fruit, he finds his powers active at night. Recently, he has often suffered from insomnia, and at night, his heart is very irritable, as if he has lost something. Milo also woke up, and he heard a strange sound, like the whistling of a sharp arrow past his ear. Open your eyes and look out the window. The moon was bright, the sea was rippling, and a black dragon stretched its wings in the middle of the moon. Dragon. Is it Anal? What pos does this guy not sleep well so late? Milo rolled over and fell asleep again. Chapter 111 Restless. There was a longing in Anal's heart, and he didn't know what he was longing for, but he couldn't help but want to find it. This desire is especially strong when night comes, especially when it is cloudy and there is no light at all. As if something important existed at that time. Because the black dragon is a dragon that manipulates darkness, Anal guessed that his strength will be improved at night, which may be the loss of control of his strength caused by the change in strength. However, after testing the gravity of his own breath, he found that was not the case. The maximum strength of the gravitational ball he was able to create remained unchanged. His power remains unchanged, that is to say, his anxiety at night is not caused by the loss of power. Bastard, what the hell is it? His restlessness gradually turned into tyranny, and if possible, he really wanted to find an opponent to fight. The dragon roared into the sky. A black spear condensed in his mouth, and the rich darkness suddenly increased a bit, like a flame with firewood added. The spear fell, and the huge gravitational force emanated. A piece of sea water was sucked into it and disappeared into nothingness. The surrounding sea water keeps coming and disappearing. A whirlpool appeared on the sea. Anil didn't stop his movements, and spit out the dragon's breath one by one. In this way, he recklessly vented his power to relieve the anxiety in his heart. Vortexes appeared one by one, and the ocean currents in this small area became turbulent. The sea water flowed rapidly, and the sea surface between the vortices dropped a lot. Roar! A roar of dragons filled the sea and sky, and an invisible coercion radiated everywhere. Enel's dragon breath was spitting, and he didn't deliberately control the direction. A vortex appeared beside the ode to the ode, and the ship was swept into it. A vortex of this size is not enough to sink the ship. But a turmoil is inevitable. Carter rolled off the bed, looking around in confusion with a pair of cat eyes. Huh, have you eaten yet? I looked at the window, the sky was still dark, and I continued to sleep. Milo was sleeping on the floor, although there was a quilt underneath, but it was very thin. As soon as the hull shook, his head hit the floor. It hurts. Milo scratched his head and got up from the ground. The eulogy was still attracted by the whirlpool, swaying up and down. Caroline slept soundly, she hadn't slept so peacefully in a long time. Holding the quilt, his face unconsciously rubbed against the pillow, changing to a more comfortable position. Milo came to the deck to check the situation. He wanted to find out what was going on. He is not rough-skinned like Anil and Carter, and he needs to be constantly vigilant about possible potential dangers. What is this? Milo watched in amazement as the eulogy went up and down in the vortex. After climbing the mast, he found a nearby area full of such vortices. Anil, something is wrong, the currents here are a little weird. He shouted, but there was no response. Just now he saw the scene of Anil flying in the night sky, and he was in a daze and half awake. He thought he was dreaming. Milo, who didn't get a response, kicked the door of Enel's room open and saw Carter sleeping on the ground. Huh, what about that fellow Enel, why is he gone? Carter looked up and glanced at him, then went to sleep. Milo. He was tired, but for his own safety, he still had to find Enel. He is the only one who might be buried in the sea in an accident. As for Caroline, of course it was ignored, he was talking about the official crew. To get rid of the whirlpool, it is impossible to rely on the sails, and it has to rely on the ability of Enel. But the point is that he inexplicably disappeared. Milo closed his eyes and concentrated on using the domineering look, extending the range of his perception to the limit. Still no voice from Enel was heard. Milo was puzzled. He couldn't figure out where Enel would go on this vast sea. Enel was already flying above the clouds. The moon is no longer flickering, and the stars are shining all over the sky. The world is brighter. Under the light, the anxiety in Enel's heart gradually calmed down. The darkness was no longer turbulent, and he restrained his strength. Then turn your wings and dive down. The wind whistled in his ears, and the air flowed over his wings. The cold air was like a sharp blade, and the oncoming clouds blocked the view. Body covered with water droplets. Passing through the clouds, a deep blue ocean appeared before him. The whirlpools looked like bullet holes from a high altitude. His sharp eyes swept across the vast sea, and in just a moment, he found the eulogy. Milo spotted him as he approached. It wasn't a dream. Milo recalled what he had seen from the bedroom window. Enel, what are you doing? Milo asked. It's a little stuffy, so I'm going to fly a few laps to get some air, said Enel. His current situation is that Milo doesn't understand, so Enel is perfunctory. You are really free in the middle of the night. Don't mind such trifles. How about you? Are you out to see the scenery? The moon is beautiful today. Milo looked up at the sky and saw a large group of dark clouds. This is not the time to talk about this. The current is very strange for some unknown reason. The boat is caught in the whirlpool. Use your abilities to get out of here. Enel sensed the active dark power in the center of the vortex, and a trace of embarrassment was fleeting. He wouldn't admit that it was his masterpiece. Don't worry, you can go back to sleep, just leave it to me here. Enel patted his chest and assured. Milo gave him a suspicious look, then returned to the cabin. From a certain point of view, Enel is still very reliable, at least so far, everything he has guaranteed can be done. Enel's ability has been developed to a very deep level, and the effects of his fruit have basically been revealed. The darkness that can devour vitality plus the possibility of infinite evolution. The price to pay is a lot of resources. The efficiency of his swallowing is very low, less than 1%, which causes his strength to grow very slowly. The human body always has its limits, and everyone has different aptitudes and different achievements. But no matter who, no matter how hard they work out, there will be an end. However, Einil does not have this problem. Although the improvement of strength is slow, there is no bottleneck at all. As long as he has the resources, he can become stronger. Einil has a sentence MMP in his heart. Doesn't he say that the poor rely on mutation and the rich rely on technology? Devil fruit is a superpower, and it should be regarded as a kind of mutation. But why is his mutation so expensive? A few devil fruits can't even bubble up. Chapter 12 Deviated. After a few days of sailing, an island appeared before them. Einil looked suspiciously at the black spot in the distance, then looked at Caroline. Are there islands on our route? Caroline's expression suddenly became tense. Because it doesn't deviate much from our route, I went to this island as a stopover to help with positioning. It is easy to go wrong on a super long distance voyage. This is my first time. In practice, it is better to be conservative. Quote. As he spoke, he also pointed to a small island on the chart to prove that he was not talking nonsense. Einil saw that it was indeed near the line connecting the place where they started and the upside-down mountain. What she said is also true, and it is not wrong to say it strictly. It's just that the causality is slightly reversed. I remembered this after I was off the road, and said that I planned to do it from the beginning. In fact, although Einil's ability can ensure the forward power of the ship, due to the influence of ocean currents, wind and other factors, their route is slightly offset. After all, Caroline was inexperienced and did not correct it in time. In other words, she took the wrong direction. Einil's threat still lingered in his ears. If you dare to point in the wrong direction, I will cut off your limbs and throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Feed the fish. Caroline kept thinking about this sentence in her heart, and she felt like she wanted to burst into tears. She didn't dare to tell the truth, afraid that Einil would really do it. So I found an excuse that seemed to make sense. Thanks to both Einil and Milo, neither knew anything about this. She was the only one on the boat who knew what to do. Then of course she had the final say. Milo looked suspicious at her, but didn't think much of it. Even if it really deviates slightly from the course, it is not unacceptable in his opinion. Better than messing around with Einil. Phew, it's gone for a while. Caroline breathed a sigh of relief. Although Einil didn't quite understand the map that had a precise scale compared to the original world, it could only be said to be a child's doodle-like chart, but he could still tell at a glance whether there was an island near a straight line. Seeing that Caroline seemed to be making sense, she nodded. In fact, even if she really led the wrong way, Einil wouldn't blame her. Anyway, detours are already commonplace. He really had nothing to worry about. Besides, it's useless to worry, right? Even the temporary goal of helping Milo find the devil fruit has no definite time limit. If that fruit has really been eaten, then Milo can only be blamed for his bad luck. The premise of feeding her to fish is that she, deliberately, leads the wrong way. As long as it wasn't intentional, Einil wouldn't blame it. This is an uninhabited island with dense jungle. Tall trees stand like guards. The edge of the island is a gentle sandy beach. Anil was too lazy to find a place to break down, and drove the ode to the beach directly. Anyway, we're not in a hurry. In addition to helping Milo find devil fruits, we're basically looking around. Let's explore. He was very leisurely. Anil is also a little interested in the position of King Shichibukai. After all, it will take a long time for him to grow up. The identity of Chiwahai can save a lot of trouble. However, the 4 emperors have not yet formed, and of course Chiwahai is out of the question. He really has no goals for a short time. Collecting vitality is also a long-term task, and the increase in physical fitness will not be effective for a while. Enel had changed into gray-green clothes and an orange hard hat. A short knife is pinned to his waist, and a shovel is behind his back. Carter is also fully armed, wearing a helmet, with a fishing rod on his back. Go fishing in the forest. Sounds quite emotive. Miro, Caroline, let's go. Hey, this forest doesn't look like a safe place. Are you really going to go in? Milo is really good at dealing with people, and it's basically a bullet thing. However, it is a bit dwarfed by large beasts. It's alright, there are really wild beasts, and they won't stare at you. It doesn't look like they have anything to eat. If they want to eat, they also eat. Carter. Judging from this figure, you can definitely eat a full meal. Milo glanced at Carter and nodded in agreement. On the other side of the island, a place where a cliff is sunken inward, a pirate ship stays in this natural harbor. There is no wind here, and the pirate flag hangs feebly. On the sail, a purple scorpion was painted with a pair of white wings. Anastasia shouted to her crew, "We'll get some fresh water and food before we set off on the great route." Oh. Is the captain finally going to act? Have a blast. The valiant and valiant Lord Shah is so beautiful, marry me. Duolong folded his hands together, his face fascinated. His response was an iron fist. Doran squatted in a small corner with his head covered. Ha ha ha, how many times is this? Doran failed to confess. Really, this guy has already been punched 465 times by me, but he still doesn't learn well. Anastasia said helplessly. Ha ha, the captain has a really good memory. No, Captain, suddenly someone hurried over. Huh, what's wrong? Vika. Then that monster is here too. Anal, the guy with a bounty of 150 million Baileys. He was one of those who attended the auction with Anastasia last time. Witnessing the skirmish between Enel and them, seeing Enel, of course there are some bad thoughts. That monster isn't here to hunt us down. Hurry up and get on the boat, let's get out of here. She made a decisive decision. There's someone on the coast, Milo said to Enel. It's a group of pirates, and they seem to have mentioned your name. Huh, you mentioned me, so go take a look. Enel took a few steps forward, then stopped. Which direction are they coming from? West. When Enel came to the coast, Scorpio had already set off. What they saw was a pirate ship heading into the distance. The flag is flying. Enel stared at the pirate flag, and felt that the logo on it was a little familiar. It seems that they don't want to meet us very much. Enel didn't chase after him, it was just a momentary curiosity anyway. Where did Carter go? How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? When they found Carter, they saw that he had actually found a small pond in the forest and caught 3 small fish. Only the size of a thumb. It saw Anil approaching and said, "Visi, let Caroline help me bake the fish. It's just 3 little buns and they're gone in one roast. You can eat them raw." Anil rolled his eyes. Then Carter really swallowed the 3 fish in one bite. The cat's face was full of dissatisfaction, and he stuck out his tongue. Meow, no smell at all. Chapter 13 Red Earth Continent. Overcast clouds, lightning and thunder. The majestic rain fell from the sky, and the strong wind whipped up the wind and waves. The eulogy swayed on the sea. Under the influence of the rain, not even Anil could see very far. The whole world is gray. Clouds blocked the sun, and heavy rain affected her vision. Caroline struggled to identify her direction in this bad weather. Her efforts were ultimately in vain. It was sunny just now. Why did this happen all of a sudden? Milo grabbed the railing. The climate in this area is particularly chaotic because the currents of the four seas converge again. Not only the first part of the Great Route, but also the corner of the four seas was slightly affected. Look ahead, Red Earth continent. Enel first saw that touch of color in the gray world. As they got closer, Milo and Caroline also saw the magnificent view. The red land, towering like a cloud, can't see the top. This is the huge land that divides the world. Well, so spectacular, Caroline exclaimed. Before she came here, she would never have imagined that there was such a miraculous scene in the world. In front of the country where she originally lived, that small island country, and this monstrous existence, it was as insignificant as dust. Enel was also shocked by this sight. Although he has learned about the magic of the pirate world from the anime, he can hardly hide the shock in his heart when he really sees this kind of magnificence. Even though he learned about the power of his devil fruit during this year's journey, there is an almost infinite possibility of growth. It gave him the confidence to one day compete with the overlords of the New World. But under the great power of nature, he also suddenly felt a sense of insignificance. But how do we get to the Great Route? Milo asked. Can't we climb the mountain by boat? I have indeed heard that the entrance to the Great Route is very dangerous. A large number of pirates have not yet reached the Dream Land, and they fell at the first level. Caroline said. Because the direction was slightly off, they didn't find the water gate. However, a huge ocean current has been seen, so the entrance is not far away. Enel rose into the air. You guys wait here for a while, I'll take a look around. Hey, Enel, wait, but Milo said it too late. He felt helpless for a while. They couldn't stay in place in this ocean current. Carter jumped into the water, and it pushed the boat away from the current. Fortunately, they were only on the edge of the current, and the pulling force was not too great, and Carter was still able to do it. If it was in the center of that huge current, even Carter couldn't swim freely. Carter, well done. Aniel folded his wings and returned to the boat. I found the entrance, 45 degrees to the left. Caroline, can you follow the current to get there? No, sorry, I can't do it. The currents here are so chaotic that I can't predict the trajectory at all. Once in, I'm afraid I can't even control the direction. Just pulling the rudder is a very laborious thing. Caroline lowered her head and twitched her fingers nervously. Enel said casually, it's okay, I don't have any expectations of you anyway. He was just asking casually, but he was sure Caroline was useless. A navigator with poor skills and weak, his team doesn't need such useless people. He wondered where to leave her. Bringing them to the entrance of the Great Route, Enel's purpose of buying her has been accomplished. She has been quite cooperative these days. She has done all the chores such as barbecue and cleaning. So he decided to give her freedom. Caroline's skills are not very reliable, and she was a proper female driver in her previous life. But it's a lot better than the bumper car driver Enel. If it wasn't for her, according to Enel's messy way, it is estimated that a lot of time would be wasted. Although Enel is not in a hurry, there is still more time, he can take his time. But it's good to be able to avoid a lot of detours. Caroline can also be regarded as half of Enel's subordinates. So he felt the need to take a little responsibility towards her. At least throw her to a safe place, or just drop her anywhere on the Great Route. She can't survive for such a weak person, which is tantamount to killing her. In fact, Enel prefers to work alone rather than in a team. He always believes in himself, and he has reservations about the trust of others. But because he does not have the ability to freely traverse the sea, so you have to rely on your partner. He had a vague guess in his heart about the next development direction of his fruit. If it really is what he thinks, then it needs a group of powerful partners to continue his plan. He prefers a backup plan for his work. Whether it's a record pointer or something. It was his first plan to find that power earlier than anyone else. But if someone gets there first, go grab it. I'm afraid I can't do it alone, so I need someone to help. Sails up, "We're ready to go," Enel said. No one responded. As for the sails, "It doesn't exist, even the mast is broken." This is when Carter slipped and broke his foot when he jumped back from the sea. "Carter, you really need to lose weight," Enel told it. Carter glanced at him disdainfully. "What do you know? Of our species, my physique is definitely the most attractive to teenage cats." Enel really couldn't figure out what race Carter was. Well, since he said he was so handsome, he didn't force it. He doesn't understand the world of cats. Approaching the great root, Enel suddenly became excited. He also wanted to do a sailing ceremony like Luffy did. He took out a wooden barrel and pressed his foot on it, which was quite laborious for him as a small man. To gain the power to be free to do anything. This time someone finally answered him. In order to taste all the fish in the world, Carter raised his short legs and put them on it with a serious look. "To see the most beautiful scenery in the world," Caroline said. After a few days of getting along, she found that Enel was also easy to talk. She has already made quite a few mistakes that have gone unpunished. Enel was not as fearful as he had been at the beginning. In fact, it's not that Enel is kind to people, but that he doesn't care about ordinary little things at all. And the things that Caroline did, breaking a few plates, lighting the boat on fire, etc., didn't matter to him at all. Milo thought for a while, and found that he didn't seem to have any pursuits. He got on the ship, largely because Enel helped him deal with a large number of Hasham's rebel army. In order to become stronger. Finally, he said, remembering his powerlessness at the time. Towards the Great Root. Oh. Chapter 14 Great Root. Under the influence of Enel's ability, the eulogy praise floated up. Proceed on the water. The currents here make it difficult for Enel to steer, so try to minimize the effects of the currents. To do this is also a lot of consumption for him. He can't shield the objects he touches from gravity like the Golden Lion, or manipulate gravity like Fujitora. Enel is giving the ship an upward gravitational pull to counteract the gravity. It's not difficult to get the boat to float, but it's hard to keep the balance. He could only estimate the approximate position of the ship's center of gravity, and it would tip over if he wasn't careful. So he never let the boat fly completely. If it is close to the sea, a slight deviation will not cause the bottom of the boat to be turned upside down. All the great currents of the North Sea converge here, forming a canal that runs along the upward channel towards the top of the upside-down mountain. This is simply a high-speed one-way street. The turbulent waves slapped the mainland and rolled up waves dozens of meters high. The sound of the waves, the wind, and the faint thunder of the sky, like a great air route welcoming new travelers. A row of water gates made of unknown metal stood at the entrance of the canal. With an air of vicissitudes, the abstract fish patterns are all over it. Ordinary pirates want to enter the great waterway, only through this. It's dangerous, but it's fine if you go by sailing. As for the windless belt, it is almost a place where there is no life or death. Now that the technology of inlaying the bottom of the ship with sea tower stones has not been invented, only those monsters standing at the top of the world dare to pass there. The world government has not blocked such traffic arteries. This shows that their control over the world is not very high. Their dominance has dropped to the lowest point in 800 years. Roger the Pirate King completes the journey of the great waterway that made the world government so vigilant. It shows that there must be some amazing secret hidden in the final island. This secret is likely to affect their rule. Once exposed, there will be a huge war that will bring violent upheaval to the entire world. But they would rather watch the pirates rush to the Great Channel than send troops to block the entrance. It's not that they don't want to, but the situation has made it impossible for them to do so. The world government has lost its power to control the world perfectly. If the upside-down mountain is blocked, then a large number of pirates can only stay in the four seas, which will cause more damage. If a large number of troops are used here, it will only make their control over the four seas weaker. But there are not many troops stationed, so it can only block some trash. Once the real powerhouse passes by, the naval fortress will only turn into ruins. The people who will be blocked are just some little pirates, and they will naturally be eliminated when they enter the Great Waterway. Really powerful people will always have various ways to sneak in. One Piece is the dream of many pirates. Is it the dream that guides people forward, or is it that people create dreams ahead? There will never be an answer. Even if the Great Route disappears, those who yearn for freedom and dreams will still not stop. The 5 old stars have no way to predict the consequences of blocking the upside-down mountain. Is the era of the great pirates over? Or the beginning of a bigger upheaval? They need to keep the world stable, even with some compromises and concessions. For various reasons, they gave up control of this entrance and let the pirates pass freely. Okay, great. Really climbing. Milo clutched the railing tightly. Miro, be careful. Don't stay on the edge of the boat, the railing might break, Anal warned. It's incredible that such a current exists in the world. Caroline grabbed the edge of the cabin door, her purple hair fluttering in the wind. The Great Waterway is really exciting. Anal looked at Minato, who had gone through many years, thoughtfully. Those strange decorations always made him feel that there were some secrets hidden on them. There are also these 5 canals in Upside Down Mountain. No matter how you think about it, it is a bit abnormal. Meow. Carter pressed the deck tightly. I miss it. The fish in the Great Waterway is delicious. Cat, have you been on the Great Route? Enel asked. What do you mean by going? It should be said that I have come back. I was born in the Great Waterway. How did you come to the North Sea from the Great Waterway? Asked Enel. Something happened where our group lived when I was a kid, so I swam with my dad to the North Sea. Carter looked inexplicable, and Enel always found it a little sad. Enel didn't ask any further questions, although he wasn't very observant. But the mood of this partner who gets along day and night can still be seen clearly. He didn't want to touch the pain in his heart again. Carter is not yet an adult, which Enel has known for half a year. But it left its own group, and rarely heard it mention its parents. Something bad must have happened. Suddenly, Enel's eyes turned into a vast white field, the world fell into a haze, and the things around him could not be seen clearly, and they entered the clouds. His face was a little wet, and his clothes were soaked with water droplets. Soon, the eulogy chanted the conflict clouds. They could already see the top of the mountain, where the currents from the 4 seas converged. The huge impact from different directions made the seawater form a huge waterfall suspended in the air. Then fall into the canal that leads to the Great Fairway. The splashes of water sparkled with colorful rays in the sun, and the water droplets flying in the air were as beautiful as pearls. The falling sea water is like raining. A rainbow stretched across the sky in the bright sun. The eulogy also rushed to the sky along the current. And then they were thrown away in the original direction. Not with the sea into the canals that flow to the Great Channel. Huiasis's Esavu, Milo screams. Ah, Caroline screamed, closing her eyes. Carter also looked nervously at Enel. Meow, let's fly after you transform. It expected Enel to go back up and catch them the same way they fell from the island. Enel was very helpless. Didn't Luffy and the others just need to catch the sea? Why face this problem? There is nothing wrong with the big things in the original book, but the small details are a bit annoying. He created a gravitational ball on the side of the ship, which changed the direction of the ship and pulled it back into the correct course. Wu Tilda survived. Milo lay on the railing. Anal realized the reason why the government did not station troops at the entrance of Reversed Mountain. This pitiful current alone can wipe out half of the pirates who want to go to the Great Route, which can save them a lot of effort. Chapter 15 Doctor, I think it can be saved again. Ahahaha, it's really exciting. Enel had the feeling of riding a pirate ship in an amusement park. Yeah, Milo exclaimed happily. They could see the sea of clouds below, endless as far as the eye could see. There were tears in Caroline's eyes. How beautiful. Enel spread his arms to the sides, feeling the air blowing on his face, and his face showed an intoxicated look. This kind of magic and magnificence, this kind of grandeur and passion, this is the charm of the pirate world. Isn't it romantic? Yeah, it's very romantic. Milo said silently in his heart. Have you seen it, Philomena? It should be very close to heaven. Then they re-entered the clouds. Enel's eyes widened, staring straight ahead. He didn't want to encounter another small curve, or a bulging rock or something. Breaking through the clouds, a straight canal appeared in front of you. Enel is always ready to activate his ability, and he was worried about encountering Rabu's pitbull. But he seemed to be lucky, with a good line of sight ahead, and everything was normal. He loosened his tense muscles. The Ode left the canal and returned to the sea. The ship is still moving forward at high speed due to inertia. Enel, get out of the way! Milo yelled. As soon as he turned on the knowledge, in such a situation, he was not so big that he didn't keep vigilance. In his perception, there was a behemoth rising from under the sea in front of the ship. Enel didn't know what to avoid. Boom! A huge blue-black wall suddenly appeared in front of them. I rely on. Enel instantly understood what it was. He still met Rabu, the deceitful whale. And the situation he encountered was worse than Luffy and them. The boat was still moving at high speed, and the distance was so close that it was too late to slow down or change course. Carter and Milo jumped into the sea. Enel fluttered his wings. Boom! Splashes of water splashed, and shattered wooden boards were scattered everywhere. The eulogy slammed into Rab head-on and was shattered to pieces. Rab didn't respond, and the huge shock hardly felt the slightest. It's dangerous, Milo said. Ahahaha, I knew it might be transported to such an emergency, so we still have a spare boat. Be prepared. Enel, Milo, and Carter were sitting on the spare boat that was taken out of the backpack space. On the deck. Milo glanced around and suddenly said, why does it seem like someone is missing? Yeah, what about Caroline? Enel said. The two looked at each other, then looked at the wreckage of the ship. There, a piece of seawater was dyed red with blood. Of course, it wasn't that the thick-skinned Rab was knocked out of the wound, so it could only be Caroline's. Caroline. Milo jumped into the sea. A moment later, Milo returned to the ship with Caroline, who had fallen into a coma. Enel steered the boat to the shore. The purple hair is loose, and the white dress is somewhat transparent under the immersion of the seawater. Her lips were pale and her face was bloodless, a sign of excessive blood loss. A plank was inserted diagonally into her abdomen. Cheer up, don't die. Milo shouted anxiously, hugging her. Caroline opened her eyes with difficulty. Miro Milo, I may be finished here. The time with you is the happiest time in my life, don't be sad for me. Tears welled in Milo's eyes. Caroline closed her eyes in his arms. Enel leaned over and poked her cheek with her finger, but she didn't respond. It doesn't move at all, it must be dead. Enel originally wanted to find a safer place to let her leave, but she didn't expect that she would not be able to survive the first level. Sad? Absolutely not. Guilt? Non-existent. It's just a little pity for her, but she will soon be able to regain her freedom. I think she can still be rescued. Milo still didn't give up. Carter took out a shovel and shoveled the ground aside. It was sad and no one will bake fish for it in the future. For the sake of taking care of Caroline a lot these days, Carter decided to dig a hole to bury her and make a grave for her. Hey Tilda Milo, you don't like her, right? Enel stared at Milo with small eyes. What are you kidding? I'm worried about myself. Without a navigator, I don't think I can go far with you. Sooner or later, you will kill me. Caroline saw the tears in Milo's eyes before closing her eyes, so she told him not to be sad about her death. In fact, she thought too much, and Milo was worried about himself. Caroline is his example. Enel said, how did I cheat? That's right, he's not a pit, just a little messy. If there is a doctor, maybe it can be rescued again. A voice came from behind. Where the hell is going to find a doctor? Milo didn't look back. Actually, there are still doctors. Enel, did you speak just now? Milo looked around. Enel shook his head. No, not me. Behind them is a man wearing a floral t-shirt, cropped pants, and a flower-like decoration on his head. "Huh, who are you?" Milo asked. "Introduce yourself before asking others. That's the most basic courtesy, isn't it?" Milo was about to answer when he heard him continue. "I'm Kukaros, the lighthouse keeper of the Twin Gap. I'm also a doctor and have a clinic nearby." "Yes, there are still doctors here. Be able to become the ship doctor of One Piece and help the terminally ill Roger survive. His medical skills are definitely the best in the world." Anil then remembered that there was a hidden figure here. "Carter, don't dig the pit for now, maybe Caroline can still be saved," Anil said. Carter looked at the shovel in his hand and put it into the space. It didn't fill back the soil and might have to continue digging later. "Then I'll trouble you, Dr. Kukaros." Anil picked up Caroline and walked forward. After walking a dozen meters, he stopped and walked back. "Where is the clinic?" "You haven't told me the location yet." "Move your feet first, then think. This is Enel's walking habit. On the battlefield, in order to devour the vitality of the corpse, he wandered all over the map. So you don't have to think about where you have come, just go over when you see the corpse." Only when he finally left would he think about where he was. "Well, that's right, in the direction you just walked. You can see it when you walk around the corner ahead," Kukaros said. "Don't linger, hurry up, or the girl's life is really in danger." Enel thought to myself, what's the use of me hurrying up? You, a doctor, is still standing in the same place and refuses to move. Who is dawdling? Chapter 166 Navigator, is it necessary? Anil carried Caroline to Kukaros's clinic, which was a small white house on the second floor. There is a large telescope on top. Anil followed Kukaros to a room on the second floor. Inside was a small white bed, and on a shelf there were bottles and jars that smelled of medicine. He put Caroline on the bed and looked at Kukaros. Both sides widened their eyes, and could even see the bloodshot in each other's eyes. There was a strange atmosphere in the air, and the scene was silent for a while. "Hey, enough of you. This isn't the time for pantomime, Caroline is really dying." Milo broke the silence. "That's right, then please. Dr. Kukaros," Anil said. "What are you still doing here? It's the doctor's business. You're going to get in my way here." "Oh yes, let's go out first." Anil pulled Milo out. "Hey, can that guy really be trusted? It's suspicious no matter how you look at it. Isn't he trying to push us away and have bad intentions on Caroline?" Milo asked. "Don't worry, we can only trust him. We have no other choice. Of course he can be trusted probably." According to Enel's understanding, there is no doubt that Kukaro's medical skills are very good. The other party is also a pirate, although from the original book, he is not a vicious person. But Anil was never afraid to speculate on others with the greatest malice, and he would not trust anyone. He didn't understand the reason why Kukaros helped them, it was just the simple heart of the healer's parents. There are few good doctors like Chopper. In fact, he thought too much about it. Kukaros really just wanted to earn some medical expenses. "If Caroline dies, what will we do in the future? I've heard that the Great Waterway is very dangerous, and it will be fatal to run around like before." Milo frowned. "It's all right, I should have said that after the Great Passage, sailing will be easier." Anil smiled, and sure enough, the Great Waterway is the place he likes. It is too troublesome to rely on oneself to determine the direction of the North Sea. The geomagnetism, astronomical phenomena, ocean currents, and air currents of the Great Route are all chaotic, and it is difficult to even confirm one's own position, let alone find an island. Past sailing skills and experience are unreliable, only the recording pointer and the permanent pointer are trustworthy. Quote. For the average navigator, they cannot accurately predict the changes in the weather on the Great Route. The harsh climate is their nightmare. And for Anil, this is his dish. In this way, their biggest directional problem, relying on record pointers, is well resolved. As for the bad weather, with Carter and Anil there, it wasn't a big problem. For them, even in the North Sea, they often encounter storms and the like. They have no experience in sailing and cannot avoid them in time. On great waterways, unless they are exceptionally good navigators, ordinary navigators are of limited use. This is also the reason why this sea area is called the Devil's Sea. It is for this reason that many newcomers are buried in the seas where the great waterway began. Enel and the others have always faced this kind of difficulty. Therefore, in the eyes of many novice pirates, it is a nightmare-level voyage, but in Enel's eyes, the situation is just a little more complicated. However, in addition to solving the problem of direction, the overall difficulty remains unchanged. Ahahaha, I know now, Milo. I wasn't messing around before, I was just helping you get used to the great waterway ahead of time. Those days when we were lost at sea weren't useless. Enel laughed and patted Milo on the shoulder. Of course Milo wouldn't completely believe Enel's nonsense. However, he was greatly relieved to hear that the problem of direction does not matter even if there are no navigators. At least their biggest problem is gone, and as for storms and the like, with Enel and Carter around, it doesn't seem to be that dangerous. Suddenly he felt that his path ahead became brighter, not as dark as before. As you say, then Caroline. Well, it's useless. Enel nodded. You didn't tell me sooner. I was so worried about her just now and wasted my feelings. Milo rolled his eyes. So what's next? Are you going to take her on the road? Milo asked. No, just leave her here. That old man Koukaros should still be trusted. Although the original book is a bit tricky in terms of some small details, the character design will not change much. And the only safe place Neil can think of is the Twin Gorge and the empty island. There may be crocodile in the future in Anabaston, and Drum Island was not very friendly until Wapple fell. And Caroline might not even be able to make it through the first voyage with them. Enel still remembered the first part of the journey, because the weather was very complicated and changeable because of the influence of the four seas. An hour later, Koukaros came over. I'm out of danger, but still very weak. I need to rest for at least 2 months. Oh, not dead. That's really good news. Enel's tone was very flat. The treatment fee is 300,000 Bailey, pay it. Koukaros said. 300,000 Bailey. Don't look at me like that, it's cheap. I'm still going to live. Enel gave Koukaros 3 million Baileys, 1 million thanks for curing Caroline, please take care of her until she is healed. We won't be waiting for her here for 2 months. The other 2 million will be left to Caroline, help me tell her, don't die so easily, just try to live. Although Enel didn't admit that Caroline was their partner, she could be regarded as half a subordinate. His attitude towards her is similar to that of Dave. If it is easy and not too troublesome, he still needs to help. Enel didn't care much about money that wasn't particularly huge. What, aren't you partners? Koukaros said suspiciously. No, she's just a temporary navigator slave we bought to come from the North Sea to Upside Down Mountain. She's too weak to keep up with us. Not just picking up a little lowly has amazing talent. And Enel needs not only talent, but also ability to be useful. If there is only potential, but it can't help at all, there is a ghost in training. Enel waved, goodbye then. Behind the door of Koukaros' house, Caroline, who was eavesdropping with her injured body, was full of tears. It turned out that they didn't treat me as a partner at all. Am I too weak? Looking at the distant shadow of the ode to the ode, Koukaros took out a reward order from his trousers pocket. As the kid with a bounty of 150 million Bailey. It's the seed of an era. What I see in his eyes is indifference, not chasing dreams. He's taking a different path than you, right? Roger, Koukaros muttered. Roar. Rab started roaring at the red soil continent again. It is really admirable for its dedication to that agreement and its affection for its former partners. Too bad all it does is in vain. Great waterways are no safe places. The person it was waiting for was dead and only a skeleton remained. Chapter 17 Chaotic Climate. The sky suddenly darkened, the sky was covered with dark clouds, and silver lightning flashed through it, like dancing dragons and snakes. In the distant sky, there was a rumbling sound of thunder. The wind was blowing, and the rain poured down with it. The wind was howling, blowing hair fluttering. The rolling waves are like the roar of the sea, and huge waves are constantly hitting. Enel stood on the deck, the rain wet his hair and running down his cheeks. He had somewhat miscalculated the storms of the Great Passage, which were more violent than those of the North Sea. The sea seems to have transformed into a ferocious demon, engulfing everything. He felt a little tired after using his powers at maximum intensity for a few hours. In such a storm, he is not easy. Hey, Enel, this storm seems to be more than a star and a half bigger than what we've encountered before, Milo shouted. At the moment when the wind, rain and the waves are mixed, if you don't shout loudly at close range, you can't hear what others are saying at all. Yes, I have a hard time steering the boat. But that's not much in a great waterway, it's just an appetizer. If it wasn't for his past experience of sailing in storms in the North Sea and accumulated a lot of experience, it is estimated that the ship would have capsized by now. Milo was a little flustered by Enel's answer. Carter stood on the deck, his eyes fixed forward. The wind blew its long hair, the rain fell on it, and the water droplets kept rolling down. Its fur is impervious to water. It stood in the wind and rain, with a calm face on the cat's face. Like a general in danger on the battlefield. It was indeed the calmest on the ship. The sea is its home, and there is no panic at all. Carter, be prepared to release the diving chamber if the storm continues to grow, Enel said. A purpose-built diving cabin is their last refuge. Carter nodded. In the end, Enel relied on his own physical strength to force the ship out of the storm. He was lying on the deck tiring in a zigzag shape. The dark clouds in the sky are gone. The sun hangs high in the sky, and the white clouds are thin, like pieces of paper. The sun is shining on the body, warm. Enel threw the recording pointer to Milo, made him look in the direction, and fell asleep. Half an hour later, he suddenly woke up. The temperature seemed to drop a little abnormally. Milo was wrapped in a thick quilt, and they forgot their winter clothes. There's something wrong with this situation. Milo looked at the pointer and said, the course is not deviated, the ship is indeed heading in the direction pointed by the pointer. A dense fog rose from the sea, and vision became blurred. Enel didn't dare to sleep anymore, and he didn't dare to let his guard down on the Great Channel. There seems to be something ahead, Milo said. As the distance gradually narrowed, his expression changed from doubt to consternation, followed by a look of panic. It's an iceberg. After transforming into a giant dragon, Enel spit out a dragon's breath to the left. In fact, this is an enlarged version of the gravitational ball they usually use to hurry. However, the usual small gravitational balls in this situation are simply too late. The black sphere exudes a huge gravitational force, and the sea water stirs with it. Under the action of this gravitational force, the ode to the ode also quickly drove to the left. Dangerously brushed by the iceberg. Before they could recover, the sky started to hail. If hail the size of a baby's fist falls from the sky, its destructive power is comparable to a bullet under the huge kinetic energy. In just an instant, several more holes appeared on the deck of the ode to the ode. Meow. Carter activated his ability, and a round green void appeared above the ship. The hail fell into it and disappeared. Carter's backpack fruit can hold any form of inanimate matter, so the bullet cannon or something doesn't work against it. Of course, there are limits to this. When the bullet reaches a certain speed, or is attached with a lot of armed color domineering, then it can break the green hole. With a thick iron plate on Milo's head, he carefully stuck his head out of the cabin. At the moment when the hail just fell, he was the one who reacted the fastest. Hide in the cabin before the hail fell on the deck. After all, this was at stake in his life, and he couldn't bear to be slow. Enel, is this what you said about sailing made easy? This is hell. Milo burst into tears. He was stupid enough to believe what Enel said. Well, I'm not lying. This little problem is nothing compared to getting lost. It's really nothing to Enel. His super high defense is not afraid of this. But this hailstorm, which even Carter dared not bear head on, was fatal to Milo. Wouldn't that be the case in the whole Great Waterway? Of course not, because the sea area near Upside Down Mountain is affected by the four seas, so it is particularly chaotic. It will be much better after walking this way. But don't let your guard down. Enel replied. Joke. If the whole Great Route was just like that, it was either a storm or a hailstorm, and even Enel couldn't hold it. The hail couldn't fall, and Carter put away its power. Snowflakes fell in the sky, beautiful and white. The whole world appears pure white. The sky and the sea are all white, as if they were in a picture scroll. So pretty. This is also the first time Enel has seen snow in the Op world. In the past, although Tetria Island had 4 distinct grades, the temperature in winter was not very low, and it never snowed. Milo shuddered. Ah, he seemed to have a cold. Wow, Milo, cheer up, don't die. Enel's thought process went something like this. Milo fell ill, and they didn't have a ship doctor on board, so no one would treat him, and then he got sicker and died. He omitted a lot of the process, so that's what he said. Bastard. Who's going to die? I'm just a little cold. Milo actually understood Enel's thinking circuit and understood what he meant. Miro, hide in the cabin. If you get seriously ill, I'll be very distressed, Enel said. You don't need to tell me that I plan to do this too. I want to live a little longer. Milo closed the door and hid under the covers. Enel also felt very cold, and his cold resistance was not very high. It's cold, but this temperature won't cause him too serious damage. As for being sick, he has nothing to do with him. Carter, the only unaffected person on the ship, was already lying on the deck and sleeping soundly. Carter was covered in ice and snow, and he became a white cat. Aren't you cold? Enel asked. Carter shivered, fat quivering all over his body. Well, when he didn't ask. Chapter 18 Whiskey Peak. Enel and his party fought against the wind and waves, danced with the hail, accompanied by lightning and thunder, and the dark clouds covered the top. After a thrilling voyage, they finally came to a more stable climate. After such a journey, Milo's heart capacity has improved significantly. If he were to face the small winds and waves in the North Sea again, he would be confident that he would be able to remain calm and not change his face. Enel chose the route of Anabaston. This route is relatively familiar to him, and the danger is lower than that of a completely unfamiliar place. And there's a huge fortune waiting for him there. Although he didn't care about money very much, how could Chandola's inestimable wealth be spared? Enel has no idea of developing power now. As long as the money is enough for living expenses, the extra money is meaningless to him. But such a huge amount of gold can buy a lot of devil fruits. This is directly linked to his strength, and he cannot tolerate being unmoved. His way of improving his strength is simply kryptonite. Charge money to make him stronger. In the original book, Luffy took so many bags of gold and sold it for 300 million Baileys. Just a pillar of the Golden Bell, they don't know how many times the gold they took. The gold from Luffy and the others in the belly of the Lord of the Sky seems to be a lot of works of art. It is old and has a little added value. Anyway, that's a drop in the bucket compared to all the gold in the whole of Shandora. So Enel is bound to get this huge sum of money. The rest of the journey was smooth sailing, and there was no bad weather. This was a relief to Milo, and it seemed that the Great Route didn't seem so scary. It didn't take long for Enel to arrive at his first stop, Whiskey Peak. There was no imaginary sidewalk, and no exclamations like, "Heroes at sea." This is a matter of course, now is 15 years before the plot began. The arrival of Whiskey Peak and Luffy's gang is also different. Whiskey Peak is now more chaotic than the original. As the first island on this route, many pirates gather here. Prey, and of course, it also attracts a large number of bounty hunters. And most of the pirates gathered here are rookies who have just entered the Great Route. For bounty hunters, such rookies are their favorite. Although the bounty for a single head is not high, it wins because the number is huge, the risk is relatively small, and it is easy to win. They are not fools either. Hunting pirates is just for money, there is no need to take risks to deal with those big pirates with high bounty. Persimmons need to be picked softly, and hard stubble should be left to the Navy as a headache. The Navy can be regarded as the employer of bounty hunters, but the vast majority of bounty hunters do not have a good relationship with the Navy. For the Navy, bounty hunters and pirates have similar properties, and they are both a group of people who recklessly rely on their strength. They're just a bunch of outlaws living a life of blood on the knife's edge for money. It is fundamentally different from the Navy that fights against pirates for justice. The distance between bounty hunters and pirates is actually only one step away. The only difference is whether the pirate flag is hung or not. They also often make a lot of trouble, disturbing the stability of society. Therefore, the Navy does not like them very much, and many people who were originally bounty hunters were also wanted and classified as pirates. Their attitude can be seen from the fact that Dasky lamented that the famous sword fell into the hands of pirates and bounty hunters. This kind of unwelcome is almost undisguised on the surface. Hate it, but the Navy has to admit that they must rely on the power of bounty hunters to reduce the number of pirates. That's what the reward orders are for. Although the current Whiskey Peak has not become the lair of bounty hunters, its number is not small. Originally, the vast majority of bounty hunters were alone and wandering the world. Or 2 or 3 people act together, rarely many people attack a target at the same time. But in this special environment, fewer and fewer people are acting alone. Because the power of teamwork is always greater than that of a single person, the efficiency and safety factor are much higher. They cooperated one after another in order to hunt bigger targets. Many groups have been formed. These groups have disputes of interests and cooperation with each other, forming an intricate relationship. Even some of the original pirates joined in. However, the cooperation between bounty hunters and pirates is not unbelievable. As long as the interests are consistent, the world government can sit down and have a good talk with the pirates. And they have the same purpose as bounty hunters to trap newcomers. Enel led Carter and Milo on the road. They didn't need someone to watch the boat, and the ode was all installed directly into Carter's space. As soon as he set foot on land, Milo became wary. The vibe in the town was clearly off. A sense of crisis kept flashing and then disappearing. That kind of malicious eyes are everywhere, which makes him feel like he has fallen into a pack of wolves, like on his back. But don't be afraid, let alone the dragon next to him, even the cat's combat power is quite impressive. And he's not a vegetarian himself. He had put his hand on his waist, ready to draw a gun at any moment. Carter has also put away the canned fish, and the cat's eyes glanced around vigilantly. Enel just felt a little strange, and found nothing unusual. He is only sensitive to those things that can bring him a sense of crisis, and he can't even notice the general mischief that is full of malice towards him. Enel, be careful, Milo couldn't help reminding him, seeing how leisurely he was. Ah, what's the matter, is there a navy? The first danger he thought of was the monsters of the navy. No, the people around are very unfriendly and there are a lot of bounty hunters. Oh, that's how it is. No wonder I felt weird from the beginning. In a dark corner behind them, the two were whispering. One of them held a bounty in his hand and said, "That's right, it's him, that kid with a bounty of 150 million Baileys." He identified Enel from Carter. By the way, what the hell is the Navy doing? A kid's head is worth 150 million. And how did this bounty order get shot? Another said. He was a little skeptical about the authenticity of this reward order, and the amount was beyond his imagination. Moreover, in order to show the viciousness of the pirates, the bounty orders are usually taken when the other party is covered in blood or has a vicious expression. From the bounty list, Enel didn't look any fierce at all. It feels like an ordinary kid shopping in the street. He was a little suspicious that the Navy had sent out the missing person notice as a reward. Chapter 19,150 million Bailey's head. Who knows, there shouldn't be anything wrong with the bounty list. It's a really good business. You can get 150 million Baileys by killing a kid. It's too simple, you can do it alone. Wait, let's go and inform the others, let's all come together. Maybe he's not as simple as he seems. Another advised. Nigel, aren't you scared? You're just a kid, what can you do? Don't be frightened by this bounty. Don't be careless. How many people have died because of contempt for their opponents? Nigel was not overwhelmed by the seemingly easy bounty, but still retained basic caution. HMPH, if you're afraid, don't follow me, I'll do it alone. He had already made up his mind to ask for this huge sum of money. Bounty hunters are desperados, and no one lacks the courage to gamble. Greed for wealth and flukes often overwhelm their sanity. He planned to leave after finishing the vote alone. Otherwise it is not safe to stay here. 150 million is enough to make most people jealous and fight for it, but he can't keep it. He drew his sword and rushed over to block Anil and the others. Nigel did not follow, he watched. Huh, who are you? Anil was a little stunned when he saw the person who suddenly rushed in front of him. He didn't remember this person at all. Be awake, kid. I want your 150 million Bailey's head. Just go ahead and capture it. This is a bounty hunter. It was the first time Anil had met a bounty hunter, and he looked at him with interest. It was found that Anil did not seem to have a look of fear. Instead, he looked at himself as if he were watching a monkey show, and he flashed a trace of anger. Don't underestimate me, bastard. Look at the knife. He raised his samurai sword high above his head and slashed straight at Anil's head with the force of slashing Mount Washan. His movements were incoherent, and even Anil, a person with almost zero fighting consciousness, could see that he had a lot of flaws all over his body. Successful. Seeing that Anil seemed to be foolish, he couldn't dodge or dodge, and he was overjoyed. He seemed to have made the right bet this time. It was as if he saw himself spending a lot of money, living in a luxurious hotel, hugging from side to side, hugging a hot girl with thin waist and long legs, drinking expensive wine. Boom! A crisp sound rang out, and the metal trembled. Knife broke. The broken half-blade swirled and flew backward, piercing his throat, and blood gushed out. The bounty hunter was still clutching the handle of the knife with an incredible look on his face. Anil is also confused. Am I being anti-armor? Why did the other party hang up before they even started? Huh. Milo was also speechless. With this strength, he dared to trouble them. Is that the kind of bounty hunter in the Great Route? Hey, rest in peace, I didn't mean to. May your soul live forever in heaven. Anil put on a sympathetic look. That look, as if he was really remorseful. Nigel was watching from behind Anil, with Carter and Milo partially blocking his view. Didn't quite see what was going on. Pirates with a bounty of more than 100 million are not easy to deal with. You have to report to the boss. Nigel left silently. He didn't feel too much about the death of his companion. Because they were originally a loose alliance of bounty hunters and didn't have much affection for each other. And the boss in his mouth has a great right to speak only because of his strength. There is no real right to order other people. Milo sensed his actions and did nothing. In his perception, the other party was not strong, and he thought that he saw Anil's performance and retreated. Soon he knew that he was wrong, and the other party was a bunch of idiots without self-knowledge. At the door of a bar, two groups of people are confronting each other. The leader of one of them was a young man with blue hair, wearing a yellow and white dress. Next to him is Nigel. Confronting him was a middle-aged man with a scar on his forehead. Sinai, we were the first to target that kid, don't interfere, said the blue-haired youth. Kobo, we have already sent people to watch him as soon as he landed. You should just stand aside. What Sinai said is also true. Basically, they have sent people to watch at all ports. There is an unwritten rule among bounty hunters that the first person to target has the right to shoot first. If other people do it, they are breaking the rules. However, this rule is obviously not applicable in Whiskey Peak. Several groups will almost always target the same prey at the same time. Therefore, in order to avoid greater conflict, they divided their respective territories. The pirates who landed at which port would have the right to take the first shot. Anil's ship was directly put away and did not go to the port. He landed somewhere between the ports of Sinai and Tabor. This is embarrassing, and there is a little controversy over the ownership of other people's heads. None of them wanted to let go of this seemingly low-risk, high-value kid. 150 million is definitely a huge sum of money. Although one of his companions had already died at the hands of Enel, Nigel and the others still didn't think he had much fighting power. It's obviously closer to our port, Sinai's subordinate said. Nigel was not to be outdone. We have already killed a comrade to deal with him. This means that we were the first to target him. Sinai said, you have lost a companion, doesn't it prove that you have already shot? But that kid is still alive and well, you have failed. So it is up to us to take over. The two sides were arguing endlessly. PFF'd, a burst of laughter broke the tense atmosphere between them. Ahahaha, Enel covered her stomach and laughed. Milo looked at them condescendingly with his arms crossed over his chest, a mocking smile on his face. Who? Tabor turned his head to look on the roof beside him. One person, one cat and one seaweed. Milo was wearing green clothes, green boots, and turquoise hair. His green is fresh and natural, and the green is elegant and refined. Okay, seems to be missing a green one. Enel watched Tabor and Sinai arguing and wanted to laugh inexplicably. When was he regarded as a fat sheep by others? Milo sensed that the other party was not strong, and if the terrain was complicated, even he had the confidence to solve them all. But these two groups of weak chickens dared to attack Enel's idea. This is simply rushing to die. Chapter 120 Dark Realm. It turned out that they were indeed rushing to die. As soon as he saw Enel appearing in front of them, he drew out his knife and rushed up. For fear of not grabbing the head. Although there are so many people here, it is impossible for one person to get all the bounty. But those who can receive heads will always get a little more. Remuneration based on credit is very important to maintain the stability of the organization. It's a pity that they are only there to give away. Milo had 14 rounds in 2 guns. There were about 40 people in Calais from both Tabor and Sinai. With a burst of gunfire, the number was immediately cut by 1/3. Bounty hunters are hesitant to come forward with such a death rate. Don't stop, run, he's out of bullets, cried Tabor. Rush, don't give him time to add bullets, Sinai echoed. Despite their shouting, Tabor and Sinai hid at the back of the crowd. They are not afraid of death, they are just looking for an opportunity to launch a thunderclap. They found a very legitimate reason for themselves. They absolutely do not admit that they are just treating others as cannon fodder. Milo consciously hid behind Carter and Enel, signaling that it was time for you to go on. Carter was about to go up and chop a few, when he heard another shot. Turning his head to the side, Enel put the smoking gun to his mouth and blew it, posing in a handsome pose. It's a pity that no matter how good the posture is, it is useless, and the number of enemies is not small. Enel looked at the gun body, shook his head and sighed. That look is clearly saying that the accuracy of this gun is not good. Milo was heartbroken, beat his chest and sighed, and lamented that a good gun had not been shipped to Mingzhu. Enel put away the gun, he was still more suitable for rushing into the crowd to open the unparalleled. He deeply felt that his fighting consciousness was weak, and he wanted to use them to practice his hands first. It turned out that in the North Sea, he could still rely on his ability to make waves everywhere, but not in the Great Waterway. We have to find a way to make up for this weakness. Without longwa, he rushed over directly, wanting to take a coquettish position. Practice your fighting skills. 2 minutes later, Enel was covered in blood. It's all his own. He was slashed more than a dozen times and escaped a total of 5. This probability made him a little desperate. Enel, what the hell are you doing? Milo looked puzzled. How can you be so embarrassed to deal with a few little scoundrels? This is a bit false. Bastard, I don't play anymore. Dark Realm, Enel snorted. Darkness surged, completely shrouding this area. The light was swallowed up, and the 5 fingers could not be seen. This is a new ability developed by Enel, which absorbs light within a certain range and deprives others of sight. It has no effect on people who have a sense of domineering, but when fighting with ordinary enemies, the effect is outstanding. Domineering is not popular in the first half, basically relying on visual and auditory battles. When Zoro was on the Sky Island, he was suppressed by the Sandora warriors with a flash gun, because the opponent's gun had a flash bomb-like effect, which could deprive the enemy of sight. What is this? I can't see. The shrouded bounty hunters panicked. The red light flashed, and screams sounded. When the darkness dissipated, only Enel was left. The strength of those bounty hunters is not strong, even if they don't become dragons. What they left on Enel's body are only shallow wounds, which are very light at this moment. He will want to use them to practice walking, which is also to confirm that the other party cannot cause serious damage to himself. Just some shallow stab wounds really didn't matter to him. It's a pity that he doesn't seem to have that talent. His physical quality and reflex nerves are much higher than these scumbags. But there is no way to completely escape their attack. Although it is difficult to notice attacks from all directions in a group battle, his evasion rate of almost only a quarter is really low. Enel's talent in physical arts is really not high. A farce. Enel pouted, disdain for these people. It doesn't matter if your IQ is not high, but you can't be without self-knowledge. A person who can't see the situation and can't understand the strength of the enemy unless he has the invincible power in the world, he will fall into trouble one day. Compared with ordinary pirates, Enel's biggest advantage is that he has the brain hole of a traveler and understands his position in this world. Not blindly arrogant. Even in Beihai, he basically has the qualifications to be domineering, but he still remains cautious. Because he knew that the world was very big, and it was not good for him to attract the attention of those monsters early. Many characters in the original work are more or less arrogant, and they are not very clear about their own strength. Perhaps this can also be said to be a kind of self-confidence, a manifestation of their courage. The courage to try even when you know you are likely to fail. But in Enel's view, this courage is an act of irrationality. Crocodile challenged Whitebeard, Golden Lion entered the Navy headquarters alone, Mariah and Kaido faced off. Compared with them, Enel lacks a little bit of edge, a little less courage, and does not have the kind of indomitable spirit. But he was a little more cautious. Once he started to act, it showed that he had a good grasp of his actions and basically would not fail. In doing so, his growth pace will indeed be slowed down a lot. But it is also more solid and secure, and it is rare to encounter a situation where he takes the initiative to attack, but is beaten and flees in embarrassment. At least so far he has never met. Carp and Skeena had two unexpected encounters, not counting him taking the initiative. It will take a while for the recording needle to register the magnetism of Whiskey Peak. Enel intends to wander around until then. Milo stopped him. Hey, Enel, you don't want to run around alone and get lost again. Huh, am I like that? Milo looked at Enel seriously, nodded, and spit out a word, like. It's alright, let's meet at the coast then. If I haven't arrived by then you bring Carter to me. Enel threw a record pointer to Milo. Milo hurriedly checked the pointer. Hey. Such an important thing is thrown around, what if it breaks? Miro, you'd better not be separated from Carter, it's quite a mess here. Although you are strong, melee combat is a weakness after all. Enel reminded. Milo has no bounty and is unlikely to be targeted by bounty hunters, but some conflicts occur for no reason at all. Maybe it's just an inadvertent look, or someone who looks unpleasant will be attacked. In the original book, Eustace Kid fought with Disc Apu because the former was a bit unpleasant to see the latter's idiot face.